Chapter 41. Seeing Qin Yining stop and ponder, Mammy Qin felt gratified. It seemed that Qin Yining wasn't an impulsive and reckless person. Mammy Qin had a good impression of Qin Yining in the past, and now she felt even better. Even if she only wanted to help, it was now 100%. Young lady. Mammy Qin quickly walked to Qin Yining and said, "Young lady is a smart person and knows what is the most appropriate thing to do. Now young lady can't even protect yourself. If you don't listen to the Prime Minister's instructions and insist on rushing out, not only will you not be able to save Miss Ruelan, but you will also lose the Prime Minister's favor. Young lady, think about your future path." Qin Yining knew that Mammy Qin was right. Ruelan was caught red-handed. She had no evidence to prove Ruelan's innocence. If she went to save her, she could only beg the old madam for mercy. However, Qin Yining also knew that she probably didn't have much face in front of the old madam. But how could she leave her in the lurch? Even if Ruelan had made a mistake, she had already corrected herself and had always taken good care of her. At this moment, Qin Yining's expression was tense. She hated Qin Huaining like never before. Ever since she returned home, how many troubles had Qin Huaining caused? She had originally been considerate and felt that Qin Huaining was innocent when she was traded back then, so it was understandable that she felt a sense of crisis. However, no matter how much she felt, she shouldn't disregard the lives of innocent people just for a moment of pleasure. Ruelan didn't harm Qin Huaining, nor did she do anything to harm Qin Huaining's interests. Qin Huaining was even scarier than a wild beast for her to harm her life like this. Wild beasts ate humans to fill their stomachs. If they didn't eat, they might starve to death. However, if Qin Huaining didn't harm others, what would she lose? If she wanted to be doted on, she could be filial to her grandmother and mother. She could show off her talent and compete head-on. Qin Huaining wasn't willing to give his heart, yet he wanted others to treat him with sincerity. If he couldn't get what he wanted, he would feel resentful. If he couldn't beat others, he would go crazy with jealousy. He would disregard other people's lives for a moment of pleasure. Qin Yining did not think of herself as a good person. If someone tried to harm her, she would fight back without hesitation. But she would never kill innocent people just because of her status. Thank you for your advice, Mammy Qin. However, Raylan had served me for a long time. She had suffered because of me. Now, I feel very guilty. As her master, if I can't save her even after doing my best, then that's my incompetence. But if I ignore her for the sake of my own safety, then that's my lack of virtue. At this point, Qin Yining suddenly felt physically and mentally exhausted. However, her weakness only lasted for a moment. When she raised her eyes again, her gaze was extremely resolute. Mammy Qin, I'd rather be an incompetent person than a lack of virtue. After saying this, she walked out. Mammy Qin's admiration for Qin Yining in her heart was about to turn into spring water. She was a servant and had been on the same boat with the old madam for most of her life. They had experienced countless hardships together, so she naturally had this kind of friendship with the old madam. Now that she heard Qin Yining's words, it was tantamount to touching the softest part of her heart. Mammy Qin quickly grabbed Qin Yining's hand. "Miss, please listen to me." Mammy Qin moved closer to Qin Yining's ear and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Miss, if you go like this, it'll only bring you harm and no benefit. I can guarantee that Miss Raylan won't die. As for the other matters, as long as Miss passes Master's test and leaves the Ancestral Hall, we can consider what to do at length. Miss, think about what this servant said. Do you still want to go out now?" Qin Yining was stunned. If Mammy Qin could guarantee that Raylan wouldn't die, wouldn't it be more useful than her going out? After all, if she went out, she would only ask the old madam to spare Raylan's life. As for clearing her name, she would have to find evidence in the future. Mammy Qin making such a promise was equivalent to doing what she wanted to do on her behalf. Last time, she and Qin Yining had to copy as punishment. It was because Mammy Qin reminded the old madam that the old madam wanted to increase the amount of copying. This time, she was locked up in the Ancestral Hall. Originally, the servants would flatter her and trample on her, reducing her food and clothing expenses. It was also because of Mammy Chin's personal instructions that she had these 7 days of comfortable life. Mammy, you. Chin Yining was at a loss for words. After being stunned for a moment, she said, "Why is Mammy helping me like this?" Mammy Chin bowed to Chin Yining and said with a smile, "Miss is the old madam's granddaughter, so you are this servant's master. It is this servant's duty to do my best for my master. What's more, this servant is the old madam's person. What this servant does is also the old madam's idea. Miss, please go back. Today's matter will be treated as if it didn't happen. Miss, please focus on memorizing and never heard the movements outside." Chin Yining immediately understood the meaning of Mammy Chin's words. Mammy Chin came this time entirely out of loyalty to the old madam. On one hand, she wanted to help the old madam establish good karma. On the other hand, she wanted to help the old madam keep her subordinates in check and not let the east wind overwhelm the west wind. It should be known that, as the head of a family, it was not a good thing for any of her subordinates to act alone. This was the case in the imperial court, and it was also the case in the small family. It seems that with the old madam's temperament, she was able to stand tall in the family and become the old madam. Mammy Chin's wisdom, calmness, and loyalty were all indispensable. Chin Yining smiled and bowed to Mammy Chin. "Thank you, Mammy, I understand. Miss, please don't be like this servant doesn't dare." Mammy Chin avoided Chin Yining's bow and turned to look at Qiu Lu. "Considering your sincerity, I won't fuss about today's matter. You should go back and reflect. As a servant, you should learn to suppress things, and not make trouble for your master. Do you understand?" Qiu Lu nodded repeatedly, her face flushed with regret. Last time when she saved Miss Tang, she spoke too much, and this time it was the same. She knew that she had rashly caused trouble for the young lady. Fortunately, Mammy Chin was benevolent. "This servant understands. Thank you, Mammy Chin, for your teachings." Mammy Chin nodded and said, "Fourth miss, don't worry and go back to study." Chin Yining knew that Ruelan would not die because of this, and Qiu Lu would not be punished. So far, it was enough. The rest would have to wait until she left. If Chin Yining wanted to deal with her, it would depend on whether she was willing or not. In the past, she did not want to harm others, but when others bullied her, she had no reason to not fight back. Even though the situation outside was changing, the days in the ancestral hall were still peaceful. Early the next morning, the person who came to the ancestral hall to deliver Chin Yining's meal box was replaced by an old woman who was about 60 years old. Chin Yining felt that it was a bit strange. The old woman was wearing a new dark green cotton jacket with the latest style. She had a gold hairpin in her hair and a pair of twisted gold bracelets on her wrists. Judging from her appearance, she was a respectable person who did not need to deliver a meal box. Seeing Chin Yining, the old woman bowed respectfully and said, "Fourth miss, nice to meet you. This servant's husband's surname is Jing, and I'm here to deliver your meal. Mema Jing, please get up." Chin Yining smiled and helped her up. Mema Jing smiled and handed the meal box to Ji Jiao and Xiaoling. While the two went to set up the table, she whispered to Chin Yining, "Fourth miss, this servant is in charge of the kitchen in the outer courtyard. Today, I received Master Zhong's order and came to deliver a message to you. Miss Ruelan has been taken to the Cloud Stepping Inn under the Zhao Yun agency. Her injuries are not serious, and they are all superficial wounds. She will be fine after applying some medicine for a few days. Fourth miss, don't worry." Chin Yining said in surprise, "Mema Jing is working for the Zhao Yun agency?" "Fourth miss, this servant's son is now the third shopkeeper under Master Zhong. My whole family relies on Master Zhong's promotion. Now that you are the owner of the Zhao Yun agency, my whole family will rely on you more in the future. This servant is only here to deliver a message. It's not a big deal. Besides, this servant is old and plans to go home and retire." Chin Yining understood and said, "I see. Anyway, thank you for coming here, Mema Jing. Miss, you are too polite. It's my honor to see you." Mema Jing looked around and lowered her voice with a smile. "Master Zhong also asked this servant to deliver a message to you. His Highness Prince Ning impeached Imperial Tutor Cao in public a few days ago. It's not that no one impeached him before, but most people remained neutral. This time, when Prince Ning took the lead, many people who used to be neutral supported Prince Ning. His Majesty condemned Imperial Tutor Cao in public. He has been stripped of his position as the Crown Prince's Imperial Tutor and ordered to go home and retire. What? That old guy Imperial Tutor Cao fell like this. Needless to say, the original neutral people suddenly turned to Prince Ning. It must be because Duke Ding and Qin Huayuan were on good terms with Prince Ning. Did these people have an agreement with Prince Ning? Or did they choose to support Prince Ning because of the wind? No matter the former or the latter, the success of Prince Ning's participation was inseparable from the fact that she successfully rescued Tang Meng. Qin Yining never thought that she would be the fuse for Imperial Tutor Cao's fall. Imperial Tutor Cao deserved it, but his daughter was still the Empress. How would she deal with her father's fall? How would she deal with the culprits who caused her father's fall? Moreover, the position of the Crown Prince's Imperial Tutor was now vacant. The Emperor only had the Crown Prince as his successor. He would definitely find a suitable person to teach the Crown Prince. Then, who would be the new Crown Prince's Imperial Tutor? This person was definitely related to the direction of the Imperial Court and the lifeline of the Dian dynasty. Qin Yining didn't eat much breakfast. The news that Mema Jing brought shocked her. Moreover, Mema Jing's arrival also made Qin Yining realize for the first time that the Zhaoyun agency had a wide network and great ability. Regardless of how the Imperial Court changed, the Zhaoyun agency in her hands wasn't just a treasury. She was afraid that she could develop more uses for it. When she thought of this, Qin Yining felt her blood boil and she was full of confidence. Just like this, noon passed. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. GE family's people went to open the door. They saw Dowager Duchess's head maidservant Ji Seong-se with a face full of smiles. Leoi has become the Crown Prince's Imperial Tutor. He's already home. Quickly let fourth young lady get ready. Later, Leoi will bring the whole family to the ancestral hall to burn incense and inform the ancestors of such great joy. Chapter 42. Xiao Ling and the GE family's servant rushed to the Snow Pear courtyard to get her clothes and jewelry, while the other quickly served her to wash up. Not long after, Xiao Ling came back with the clothes and respectfully served Qin Yining to change her clothes. Her attitude was even more cautious than a few days ago. Qin Yining thought it was funny that she had jumped from the Prime Minister's daughter to the Imperial Preceptor's legitimate daughter. She had risen in status, right? But she didn't feel proud. After all, the Demon Empress had such a background. In just a moment, it was lively outside the ancestral hall. Through the door, she could hear the servants' cheerful chatter. The GE family's servant and Xiao Ling opened the door and immediately chatted with the servants who came to prepare. Qin Yining was a little curious, so she stood not far from the door and watched the people outside bring in incense, candles, and other tributes. She found that Bai Tong and Bai Dao, who served Qin Huaining, had also come. They were helping Ji Xiong and Yu Yi from Ci Xiao Garden. She didn't need to think carefully to know what was going on. In terms of reputation, she was much worse than Qin Huaining. She had to learn more. Bai Tong and Bai Dao had already seen Qin Yining. Seeing her dressed up and waiting at the door, Bai Tong sneered. She is fantasizing that the first master will let her out. Bai Tong's voice wasn't loud, but she didn't deliberately lower her voice. The people around her heard it. They were busy with their own things, but their ears were erect. Bai Dao pulled Bai Tong. You don't want to live anymore. Why don't you live a good life? Why do you want to die? Don't pull me. Bai Tong shook off Bai Dao's hand and snorted. People say that if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. That bitch Ruelan could steal the old madam's jade bracelet. It can be seen that her master is not a good person. The old madam was kind and only beat her up and chased her out of the manor. If it was someone else, they would have beaten her to death. But there are some people whose subordinates have done such a disgraceful thing, yet they act as if nothing has happened. It's really shameful to look at. She had long had enough. Qin Yining had hit her and bullied her family's young miss several times. Now that Qin Yining was in dire straits, it would be a loss if she didn't take this opportunity to step on him a few times. It was said that Qin Yining was a barbarian. If she could provoke this barbarian to fight with her on such a good day, it would be even better. Her daughter would definitely reward her handsomely. Bai Tong was proud of her scheme, and the provocative look on her face became more serious. She said that she is the legitimate daughter of the first old master, but who knows what is really going on? Even the first madam doesn't like her, and she still acts like she is so noble. If you're so noble, why did you secretly run out of the manor to see an outsider and get punished by the Prime Minister to close the ancestral hall? To put it bluntly, she is just a barbarian who has not lost her wildness. She is full of the aura of a commoner, and she is brought into our manor like this. It will tarnish our good reputation. These words were very serious, and the people around heard it clearly. They also thought about Bai Tong's provocation in their hearts. There were also people who had heard of the heroic deeds of the fourth miss, and their eyes were already shining as they waited to watch a good show. But when everyone looked in front of the ancestral hall, they only saw Qin Yining's flower-like smiling face. On such a joyous day, I heard Big Sister Bai Tong's words. It is enough to see that Miss Huaining has taught her subordinates well. I don't know if Big Sister Bai Tong's words today were your own idea. Or was it your daughter who taught you? Qin Yining was still standing in the same place with a smile on his face, but his eyes reminded Bai Tong of that night. When Qin Yining's fist fell on her body, it could be said to be cold and sharp. Bai Tong really wanted to fight with him with arms akimbo. But she had no choice but to admit defeat. Looking at Qin Yining's appearance, the corners of her mouth opened and closed, but she did not say a word in response. Since your Miss Huaining has not taught you the rules of being a servant, when I get Xian in the future, I will teach you well on her behalf. Qin Yining smiled slightly. Big Sister Bai Tong, just wait. Bai Tong could not help but tremble. Qin Yining's beautiful eyes looked around, and looked at the people who had just sneered, and said, "Who else wants to learn with Miss Bai Tong? Just do it." The people who had just sneered at Qin Yining did not dare to breathe loudly now. It had nothing to do with them, so why did they have to provoke the fourth miss? Even if she made a mistake, she was still the legitimate daughter of Grand Preceptor Qin, and Qin Huaining was still an adopted daughter. Bai Tong was angry and afraid, and the feeling of being stared at by a wild beast climbed up her spine. She was so scared that she felt cold all over. She could not help but regret her impulse just now. She should have taken advantage of Qin Huaining's presence to show off. That way, not only could she gain Qin Huaining's appreciation, but she could also divert Qin Yining's attention. Qin Yining saw that there was no more trouble outside the door, so he lost interest in watching the show and went back to sit and rest. Not long after, Xiao Ling came to report, "Young Miss, Old Madam, First Master, and the others are all here." "I know." Qin Yining came to the courtyard and saw Second Master Qin Shuyuan and Second Madam Su supporting Old Madam, who was wearing heavy makeup, to enter the door. Third Master Qin Jiyuan and Third Madam Wang walked beside Qin Huayuan, smiling and chatting. Behind them, First Master Qin Yu and his wife, Second Master Qin Han and his wife, and a group of cousins all came. Qin Huaining and Sixth Young Miss walked at the back holding hands, whispering something. They seemed to have noticed Qin Yining's gaze, and when they looked over, they sneered. The whole family was here, except for the Sun Clan. It seemed that the Sun Clan was still in the Duke's mansion and was unwilling to come back. Perhaps they were putting on airs and waiting for Qin Huayuan to pick them up. Qin Yining sighed helplessly, adjusted his mood, and went forward to greet Old Madam, father, uncle, and aunt. When Qin Huayuan saw Qin Yining again, not only was he not angry, but he also liked him a little more. If Qin Yining didn't go to Prince Ning's mansion to ask for people, those fence-sitters wouldn't have quickly taken sides, Prince Ning wouldn't have successfully defeated Grand Preceptor Cao, and he wouldn't have become the Crown Prince's Grand Preceptor today. Originally, as the Prime Minister, Qin Huayuan had reached the end of his official career. No matter how hard he worked, it was very difficult to make progress, not to mention that it wasn't easy to maintain his position. He didn't expect that the problem that had troubled him for many years would be solved by this little girl with a wrong move. It could be seen that this girl was not only intelligent and tactful, but also had great luck. Sister Yi should have finished studying these days, right? You can move back to live in a little while. Qin Huayuan turned to old madam and said, I saw that Sister Yi's snow pear courtyard was located in a remote location, and there were many errands to run, so I gave my Yaoqin and Yuqi to Sister Yi. As for the monthly allowance, the Yaoqin and Yuqi will be counted in the study of the outer courtyard. When everyone heard this, they were somewhat stunned. Everyone present knew that there were 4 beautiful first-class maidservants in Qin Huayuan's study. They were all 15 years old, and they were respectively named Yaoqin, Yuqi, Moxiang, and Danqing after the 4 arts that they were good at. They only worked in the study of the outer courtyard and received a monthly allowance from Qin Huayuan. Their status was particularly high among the servants in the Fu. There were many rumors behind the scenes. The Sun clan had been jealous of these 4 maidservants many times. Last year, Second Master Qin Shuyuan had taken a fancy to Yuqi and wanted to ask Qin Huayuan for her to be his concubine, but he was rejected by Qin Huayuan. Today, he had given 2 to Qin Yining all of a sudden. Qin Yining had Yuxiong gone, and Ruelan had been punished to leave. It just so happened that there were 2 fewer maidservants by his side. It was difficult for such a big figure like Qin Huayuan to notice that there were 2 fewer maidservants by his daughter's side and generously make up for them. What kind of father-daughter relationship was this? It seemed that they had all underestimated Qin Huayuan's love for his daughter. Wasn't it said that Qin Yining had made a mistake and was hated by Qin Huayuan, so he was locked up in the ancestral hall to reflect on his mistakes? Looking at it this way, it wasn't the case at all. Qin Huayuan's teeth creaked as he gritted his teeth. Qin Huayuan was giving face to Qin Yining in public. He wanted to tell everyone that she was his most beloved daughter. Chapter 43. I know you dote on your daughter. Old Madam smiled. I was just thinking about Sister Yi. Now that there are 2 less people in the house, I wanted to order people to choose a good one from Ci Xiao Garden for Sister Yi. Now that you have a plan, it's perfect. Qin Yining ignored Qin Huaining's gaze that seemed to want to eat him and happily saluted, Thank you, old madam. Thank you, father. Even though she resisted in her heart. She wanted to turn Snow Pear Courtyard into an impregnable iron bucket. How could there be more people by her side? However, her father gave her face, so she couldn't not appreciate his kindness. Since they were here, she could settle them in any way she wanted. There was no need to make her father unhappy. Nowadays, Qin Huayuan was in high spirits because of happy events. Everything was pleasing to his eyes. Seeing Qin Yining happily thanking him, for the first time in many years, he experienced the satisfaction of a father giving to his children. His mood became more and more cheerful. After chatting for a while, seeing that the auspicious time had arrived, everyone went to kowtow and offer incense to the old ancestor according to their status and seniority. Qin Yining naturally lined up with the girls. The girls knelt in 2 rows, held incense with both hands, and respectfully kowtowed to the ancestral tablets. After offering incense in turn, they left. After all the ceremonies ended, the men all went to the outer courtyard. Old Madam said, You all go back. First Master wants to hold a banquet to thank his colleagues. You all be careful and don't offend the distinguished guests. The girls answered in unison, Yes. Second Madam thought for a while and smiled. Eldest uncle is now the Grand Preceptor of the Crown Prince. His Highness the Crown Prince will also be present at the banquet, right? Old Madam smiled and shook her head. The Crown Prince's banquet will be held 3 days later. The Crown Prince will personally visit the Grand Preceptor. At that time, we will still be busy. The Crown Prince will visit. Third Madam smiled and clapped her hands. Oh my! That's such a great honor. It's all thanks to Uncle that our family is able to enjoy such glory. Old Madam was overjoyed by her words, and a few more wrinkles appeared on her face because of her smile. Second Madam also put her arm around Qin Yining's shoulder and said, That's why I said that our sister Yi is a little lucky star. After she came home, good things happened one after another. All the sisters laughed along with her. Qin Huaining clenched his fists tightly. What did he mean by that? Was it because she was the daughter of the first wife that her father didn't become the Grand Preceptor? Old Madam nodded in agreement. She put her palms together and bowed in the direction of the ancestral hall. She said, I have also noticed that ever since Sister Yi came back, eldest brother's official career has been smoother. Thanks to the ancestors' blessing, our family's lost flesh and blood has been found. It is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Second old madam and third old madam imitated old madam's actions and sincerely bowed 3 times. Third madam smiled and said, "All right, there are many things to do in the manor today. Let's disperse and return to the courtyard. Mother, second sister-in-law, and I will send you back." Old madam nodded. Nanny Chin had already asked a sturdy older female servant to carry a small sedan chair over. She helped old madam get on the sedan chair and sit down. Second Furen and third Furen followed along with their maidservants and left the ancestral hall first. Seeing that the elders had left, the girls went all the way to the inner residence. Third young miss and eighth young miss had always been close to Chin Yining. Along the way, they chatted and laughed as usual. Seventh young miss wasn't familiar with Chin Yining, but it could be seen that she was more respectful and warm than before. Chin Huaining and sixth young miss walked behind them. Seeing them surrounding Chin Yining like stars surrounding the moon, they couldn't help but feel sour in their hearts. Sixth young miss sneered and said, "So what if her status is noble? If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. Your personal maidservant is a thief. This time, you can't blame it on eldest aunt, right? Now, she has been by your side for a long time." The originally joyous atmosphere was broken by sixth young miss's words. Chin Huaining pulled sixth young miss's arm and shook it. "Shuang Jia, don't say these things. Let's go back quickly." As she spoke, she looked timidly in Chin Yining's direction, as if she was afraid of being bullied. When sixth young miss saw Chin Huaining like this, she instantly imagined many scenes of Chin Yining bullying Chin Huaining. She felt more and more injustice for Chin Huaining. Don't be afraid. There will always be people who don't curry favor with those in power. You still have me. Chin Huaining held sixth young miss's hand with gratitude. Her eyes rippled as if she was about to cry. Chin Yining, third young miss, seventh young miss, and eighth young miss looked at each other. The 4 of them tacitly led their people forward quickly. When Chin Huaining and sixth young miss looked forward again, they had already walked 10 steps away. Sixth young miss flew into a rage. "How dare she ignore me?" Chin Yining said to third young miss from the front, "Let them do what they want. Do you want to lower yourself to quarrel with them?" Third young miss nodded in agreement. "Eldest uncle is holding a banquet today. It's better to avoid unnecessary trouble." Fourth young miss, "Don't take it to heart. Living a peaceful life is the most important thing." Chin Yining teased third young miss. "That's why I say third young miss is the most virtuous one. In the future, the Count of Jian and's estate will be blessed." Third young miss's face flushed red. She pinched Chin Yining's face and said, "Don't laugh at me. I'm the third and you're the fourth. You're the next. Now that eldest uncle is the grand tutor, your husband's family must be rich and noble. You still have the time to laugh at me." Seventh young miss and eighth young miss also laughed. Eighth young miss said, "Third young miss is right. I've also heard people speculate that fourth young miss will be the crown princess in the future." Seventh young miss also nodded, "That's right. With your family's background, you'll be well matched to be the crown princess. I've heard that the crown prince is cultured and refined. He's an extremely refined person and is skilled in calligraphy and painting. His attainments in calligraphy and painting have already reached the pinnacle. Although there's a concubine in the Fu, a concubine is still a concubine. In the future, the crown prince will inherit the throne. The crown princess will be the empress." "Ayo, you're really getting more and more ridiculous. His Majesty's health is good. Look at what you're saying." Chin Yining tickled seventh young miss. "I should have told Nurse John what you said. See if Nurse John will hit you." Third young miss, seventh young miss, and eighth young miss's hearts trembled when they heard the first half of Chin Yining's words. They inwardly thought that they had misspoken. If word got out, it would be very disrespectful. However, the second half of their words were mischievous and intended to change the topic. Seventh young miss and Chin Yining laughed and joked around. She secretly sighed at Chin Yining's deep and quick-witted thinking. Psychologically, she became closer to Chin Yining. When they reached the fork in the road, Qin Yining bid farewell to them and returned to Snow Pear Courtyard. Everything in Snow Pear Courtyard was the same as before, except for the absence of Ruelan. After visiting Nurse Jean, Qin Yining returned to his room to rest. Qiu Lu and Liu Yue served him by his side. Qiu Lu was as usual, but Liu Yue was a little unhappy. Liu Yue originally wanted to be promoted as a third-ranked servant girl by her young miss's side. Now, the two second-ranked servants above her had left. If they really knew how to do things, they should have immediately promoted the servants around them. Who would have thought that her young miss, who was grounded and didn't say anything, would be snatched away by the people in the outer courtyard study room. Moreover, Yarou Qin and Yu Qi were both first-ranked servants. They were even higher ranked than Ruelan and Yu Xiong. Liu Yue felt angry. If this continued, how long would it take for her to rise above others? Qin Yining played with his teacup and looked as if he was in a daze while staring at the lattice window. However, he clearly saw Liu Yue's slightly dissatisfied expression. She didn't understand what was wrong with Liu Yue, but she didn't want to see the person beside her with a black face. Thus, she said, "Liu Yue, go and rest first. Qiu Lu, stay." Liu Yue's heart was filled with resentment. There was no one beside her, but her young miss still refused to use her. There was no need to pull her. She was more than willing to rest. Anyway, they were all third-ranked servants. She wouldn't receive an extra monthly salary even if she did more work. Liu Yue bowed and turned to leave. When only Qin Yining and Qiu Lu were left in the room, Qiu Lu said, "Young miss, don't lower yourself to her level." "I don't care. I just don't know what happened to her." "What happened these days?" Qiu Lu shook her head. "Other than Sister Ruelan's incident, nothing else happened." "Young miss, how is Sister Ruelan now?" "Everyone said that she was beaten to death. You weren't at home, and we were grounded. Although Nanny Jean could move around, I didn't dare to ask." Qin Yining laughed and held Qiu Lu's hand. "Don't worry. Ruelan is now recuperating at the Cloud stepping in with Miss Tang. I still have something I want to do. Perhaps I'll need your help." Qiu Lu's expression turned serious and said, "Young miss, please tell me what you need. I'll do my best to help. I'm not sure yet. I'm just guessing. Today, my father is holding a banquet with his colleagues. I think there will be people who are upright. Now that I've taken Miss Tang in, they will definitely know. With their concern for Miss Tang, they will definitely take action. I want to make use of this matter." Qin Yining whispered a few words into Qiu Lu's ear. Qiu Lu widened her eyes in surprise. "Young miss, is this all right? What's wrong with it? I don't harm innocent people, but those who have bad intentions won't be able to escape." Just as she finished speaking, Liu Yue's voice came from outside. "Young miss, someone is here to give you a gift." Qiu Lu's eyes widened even more. "Young miss, your guess is too accurate. What Qin Yining said just now was that someone would definitely give her a gift today." Qin Yining smiled and asked Qiu Lu to help Liu Yue receive the gift. The gift was a scroll of painting. Qin Yining unfolded the painting and was stunned when she saw it. Wasn't this painting the painting of the 8 horses hanging in Prince Ning's residence? Laying the painting flat on the square table, Qin Yining's fingertips brushed across the painting and finally landed on the bottom left corner of the painting. When she saw this painting at Prince Ning's residence that day, there was no signature on it. But now, there was a signature and stamp on the painting. The words Layman Qing Yang were written on it. Anyone with a bit of common sense would know the name of Layman Qing Yang. In the past, Qin Yining didn't know about it, but Nanny Jean had told her about it. The Crown Prince was obsessed with calligraphy and was a famous master of calligraphy and painting. Layman Qing Yang was the name that the Crown Prince used to sign off on his paintings. It was derived from the meaning of during the Qing Hai banquet, the Peace of the Four Seas. This painting was actually done by the Crown Prince. Liu Yue smiled and said, "Young miss, the person from Prince Ning's residence who came to deliver the painting is still waiting in the outer courtyard. He said that Prince Ning has something to say to you." Qin Yining was stunned and quickly nodded. "I understand. Qiu Lu, accompany me." Chapter 44. The outer courtyard was currently bustling with noise, and indistinct sounds of opera singing could be heard. There were also servants hurriedly walking past the alleyways and rockery. Qin Yining was afraid of offending the esteemed guests of Qin Huiyuan and hurriedly took a secluded path through the Moon Gate. After a turn, she arrived at the place that Liu Yue had told her about. This place was also used by the outer courtyard to receive guests. However, the place was narrow and the location was remote. It was obviously used for people of low status. Qin Yining entered the small courtyard and saw a tall and thin man standing with his back facing her. The snow-white cloak that he was wearing was very familiar. A 13 or 14-year-old servant beside him had already seen her and hurriedly bowed. The man turned around. Indeed, it was the young man that Qin Yining had seen at Prince Ning's residence. She was somewhat surprised. According to her guess, this should be the son of Prince Ning who had been adopted by the emperor as a prince. She didn't expect that Prince Ning would personally send the painting and message. With such a noble status, how could he be wronged to wait in such a remote courtyard? So it's you. Qin Yining curtsied and bowed. The servants were impetuous and had wronged you to wait here. I will immediately instruct them to prepare the main hall. The young man heard her and laughed lightly. His brows, which were usually knitted, relaxed. His eyes were bright as he looked at Qin Yining. His voice was also very gentle. Miss, you don't have to mind. I asked them to bring me to a remote place. After all, my match is in 3 days. Today, there are too many acquaintances at the Imperial Tutor's banquet. It wouldn't be good if they saw me and came here today. What did he mean by my match is in 3 days? Qin Yining recalled that old madam had said that the crown prince would personally come to invite the Imperial Tutor to the banquet 3 days later. Qin Yining was shocked and knelt down. So it's your highness the crown prince. I was impetuous and offended you. Please forgive me. When Qiu Lu heard that this was the crown prince, her hands turned cold and she knelt down with a thud. When you and I met, we didn't care about each other's status. Why are you so nervous now? My real name is Yuqi Yang. My courtesy name is Qing Yang. Miss, you can just think of me as a friend, or perhaps as a disciple of your father. Yuqi Yang reached out to support her. I wouldn't dare. Qin Yining stood up, took 2 steps back, and said politely, I was wrong about your highness's identity in the past. If my words have been rude, please forgive me. Oh, guess who I am? Yuqi Yang's main point was obviously different from Qin Yining's. Qin Yining lowered his head and said, I thought you were Ning Wang's adopted son. Yuqi Yang chuckled. Why do you think I'm that person? We don't look alike at all, and he is older than me. Qin Yining respectfully replied, I guessed it from your words and actions, the way you addressed Ning Wang, and your behavior at Ning Wang's residence. However, I never thought that you were the crown prince. I even said some nonsense about your painting. I'm really ashamed. No, what you said that day was very helpful to me. It could even be said that you enlightened me. You made me understand that a good painting isn't about being skillful, but about truly understanding the world. Only by reflecting the true form of the painting can a painting be given a soul. Speaking of paintings, Yuqi Yang talked non-stop, her eyes were shining. If I wasn't the crown prince, I would really want to walk around and see for myself, to see with my own eyes the mountains and rivers. I'm sure I'll be able to draw a painting with soul. Qin Yining lowered his eyes to hide the emotions in his eyes. It seemed that the crown prince was truly obsessed with painting. However, the crown prince was the heir to the throne. Now that Dian was in a precarious situation, wasn't it not good for him to be so leisurely? Your Highness, why did you send the painting of 8 horses to me? Qin Yining pulled the topic back to the right track. Yuqi Yang came back to his senses and said with a smile, Oh, that painting isn't suitable to be placed in Ningguang's residence. It's fine to give it to Miss to hang up. Also, for this matter to be successful, it can be considered a form of thanks to Miss. Qin Yining understood as soon as he heard this. In that painting, the leading horse didn't have a leader. This could be interpreted in several ways. It could be said that it implied that the emperor was in the first place but didn't do anything important. It could also be said that the leading horse was in the second place. If this painting was hung in the residence of someone who had the qualifications to inherit the throne, it would cause people to think that Ning Wang was mocking the emperor. It could even be linked to his disloyalty. If it was hung in a young girl's room, no one would think too much about it. As for the reward for success, it was probably because Ning Wang had successfully caused Imperial Tutor Cao to lose his position. However, Qin Yining still didn't want this painting. The Crown Prince bestows a painting. It shouldn't be declined. However, there are differences between men and women. I ask the Crown Prince to take this painting back. As he spoke, he called Qiu Lu to retrieve the painting. Yu Qiyang frowned when he heard this. The attendant beside him immediately went to stop Qiu Lu. "Miss, why do you need to be so distant with me? Even if young lady doesn't do anything, your father is already the Grand Preceptor and tied to the Eastern Palace. Perhaps even young lady's future will be tied to the Eastern Palace. What's the point of declining now?" Qin Yining's heart trembled when he heard this. He looked up at Yu Qiyang with uncertainty. Yu Qiyang was looking at him with a burning gaze. His gaze was filled with deep meaning. Moreover, the Crown Prince's fair skin was slowly turning red. Even his neck, which was right next to his snow-white beard and armpit collar, had turned red. Yu Qiyang met Qin Yining's clear gaze. He couldn't hold on for more than 2 breaths. His face and heart palpitating, he looked away. He covered his mouth and coughed twice to cover it up. He then said, "Miss, please keep that painting. If you don't want it, you can burn it. I still have matters to attend to, so I won't delay Miss any longer. Goodbye." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned and left. Qin Yining looked at his back as he hurriedly left with his entourage. A phrase appeared in her mind, fleeing in defeat. Her thoughts were somewhat heavy. The Crown Prince's words just now were very clear. Could it be that her future would be tied to the Eastern Palace, just as everyone had guessed? Judging from the Crown Prince's words, this seemed to be his intention. Moreover, as the daughter of the Imperial Tutor, her status was high enough. But for some reason, Qin Yining didn't feel the joy of being able to become rich and noble. Perhaps one day, she would become the Empress of the Empire. This kind of life wasn't what she wanted. She only wanted her family to be safe and sound. She wanted to live a simple and ordinary life. She didn't want to be rich and noble. She only wanted to be stable and stable. Being the Crown Prince's woman and being the Emperor's woman wouldn't be stable and stable. However, if this kind of thing really happened, could she refuse? Now that her father had become the Imperial Tutor, it meant that he had already chosen a side and was no longer a bystander. In order to stabilize her position, a marriage alliance was the best way. If her father really wanted to have a marriage alliance with the royal family, she was the only candidate to marry the Crown Prince. As the daughter of the family Qin, she couldn't refuse this kind of arrangement. Moreover, in the eyes of others, this kind of future was already a supreme honor. Many people would be envious and jealous of it. On the way back to Snow Pear Courtyard, Qin Yining was silent. Qiu Lu had personally witnessed the scene just now. Even now, her face was still red. It seemed that if Qin Yining didn't say anything, she didn't dare to say anything either. When he returned to his room and looked at the painting again, Qin Yining suddenly felt irritated. "Put this painting away properly." "Yes." Qiu Lu was just about to put it away when she heard a servant call out from outside, "Miss Huaning and 6th Miss are here." Before Qin Yining could say anything, the curtains to the main room were lifted. Qin Huaning and 6th Miss Qin Shuangning walked in hand. Both of them were accompanied by their own personal servant girls. "We had nothing to do, so we came to sit with 4th sister. 4th sister, you don't mind, right?" 6th Miss said as she sat down at the square table. Qin Huaning also sat down slowly. Qin Yining raised his eyebrows. "Of course I don't mind. I'm just curious. 6th sister and Miss Huaning obviously don't like me, so why did you come here to make trouble for yourselves?" "Qiu Lu, put away the painting. Liu Yue, serve the tea." 6th Miss and Qin Huaning didn't expect that Qin Yining wouldn't even bother to put on an act and directly say something like that. Their faces stiffened for a moment. Qiu Lu and Liu Yue did as instructed. Sixth Miss saw that Qiu Lu was about to roll up the painting of the 8 horses, so she went forward and snatched it away. She said, "I didn't expect you to have a painting here. Do you admire this?" When she unrolled the painting, the inscription Layman Qing Yang came into view. Seeing this, the 6th young mistress laughed and threw the painting on the ground. She laughed until she was out of breath and said, "You don't admit that you are a barbarian. Is a fake painting worth you putting away like it's a treasure?" Qin Huaining lowered his head and saw the inscription on the painting. His heart trembled. Was this a painting made by the Crown Prince? Qiu Lu hurriedly put the painting away, afraid that 6th Miss would do something bad and step on it. Qin Yining was already angry. "Of course I don't understand these things. However, I grew up in the countryside. Did 6th Miss also grow up in the mountains? Don't you know how to be polite? 6th Miss and 7th sister are obviously born of the same mother, so why is there such a big difference in their temperaments? It seems that those who were raised by the DI mother are more educated and reasonable. These reasons are not deceiving me." 6th Miss's laughter stopped abruptly. She sneered, "Don't be so smug. It's just a fake painting. His Highness the Crown Prince never gives away his paintings easily. You're just a little girl. Don't use a chicken feather as a token of authority. What do I have to be smug about? Everything I have is a matter of course. Why should I be smug?" Qin Yining automatically ignored the second half of her words. Qin Huaining was alarmed. Could it be that the painting was really given by the Crown Prince? How did Qin Yining hook up with the Crown Prince? Could it be that Qin Yining will really become the Crown Prince's consort in the future? Qin Huaining was unwilling to accept this. He could not maintain his expression. His smile was stiff and his eyes were filled with resentment. Look at younger sister Xiaoxi. Now that there are 2 maids missing from her room, it's not looking good. Why isn't there even a sip of hot tea for us? If the upper beam isn't straight, the lower beam will be crooked as well. You've raised a thief, and you even stole the old madam's things." 6th Miss laughed out loud as she said this. "You can only use a fake painting to show off your power." Qin Yining clenched her fists. What should she do? She wanted to beat someone again, who knew that right at this moment, the sound of disorderly footsteps could be heard in the courtyard. Qin Yining stood up to look. He saw 2 beautiful maids around 15 to 16 years old leading a group of sturdy older women in. Seeing Qin Yining standing in the corridor, the 2 maids bowed deeply. This servant, Yarrow Qin, Yuchi, pays respects to 4th Miss. Earlier, Grand Preceptor was holding a banquet. The female guests sent many gifts to Miss. Grand Preceptor instructed this servant to bring them to Miss on the way. As the 2 maids spoke, they stepped aside. The older women behind them carried all kinds of gift boxes into the room one by one. When Qin Huaining and 6th Miss saw so many gifts, their eyes almost couldn't see enough. Their faces immediately darkened. Chapter 45. The mountain of gifts slapped Qin Huaining's face painfully. All of this should have belonged to her. Whether it was the identity of the imperial tutor's legitimate daughter, the table full of gifts, or the adoration and respect of others, all of this should have belonged to her. But now, she had to look at other people who had the happiness that she once had at her fingertips and be immensely pleased with herself. Qin Huaining couldn't accept this. Now, it wasn't only the old madam, maternal grandmother, and the Sun clan who were biased. Even her father was wholeheartedly leaning towards Qin Yining. How big of a mistake was it to go out of the fu to see an outsider? Yet, her father only allowed Qin Yining to eat well and stay in the ancestral hall for 7 days. Then, he rewarded her with the zither and jade chess. In the past, although her father didn't treat her badly, he was always cold and indifferent and didn't speak much. But now, he doted on Qin Yining so much. Looking at Qin Yining's relaxed appearance, Qin Huaining really wanted to pounce on her and tear off that hateful face of hers. The flames of jealousy ignited and almost burned away her rationality. Younger sister Xiaoxi is so lucky to have met with father's glorious ascension to the position of imperial tutor. Unexpectedly, you can also enrich your own personal treasury. Qin Yining saw Qin Huaining like this and sneered, "That's right. Today, Second aunt even said that I was a little lucky star. You're really tenacious to be able to survive in the mountains for so many years without being eaten by wild beasts. The sixth young mistress gritted her teeth. Qin Yining laughed. Sixth sister is really too naive. You think that you can survive with only luck. Do you know why I wasn't eaten by wild beasts? Qin Yining walked towards the sixth young mistress step by step. Her cold and piercing gaze made the sixth young mistress involuntarily take 2 steps back. Why? Because I ate all the wild beasts. Standing in front of the sixth young mistress, Qin Yining lightly patted the sixth young mistress's face with her slightly cold, calloused hand. Qin Shuangning, can you be fiercer than wild beasts? The sixth young mistress was so frightened that she took 2 steps back and almost hit the wall behind her. She looked like a small animal that had met its natural enemy and was about to immediately run away. Qin Huaining glared at Miss Liu when he saw how embarrassing she was. Qin Yining's lips curled up. Her opponent's level was too low, making it seem like she was bullying a little girl. If the two of you like to sit here, then sit here. I have to go out and check the accounts with Master Zhong, so I won't keep you company. Qiu Lu, put everything away. Qiu Lu nodded. No matter how thick-skinned Qin Huaining and the sixth young miss were, they couldn't stay any longer. Besides, their faces had been slapped so hard that their spirit had been sapped clean. Qin Huaining grabbed Miss Liu's hand and turned to leave. When they arrived at the gate, Qin Huaining whispered a few words into Bitong's ear. Bai Tong immediately nodded and chased after Qiu Lu. Inside the main room, Qin Yining saw that everyone had left and smiled at Yao Qin and Yuqi. There were guests just now. Sorry for the inconvenience. This servant doesn't dare. After witnessing how Qin Yining intimidated Miss Liu, the two who had heard the rumors had a new understanding of Qin Yining. Yao Qin smiled and bowed. Master has already instructed us. From now on, we are Miss Liu's servants. If Miss Liu has any instructions, feel free to order us. That's right. Yuqi also bowed. I understand father's intentions. I know that second young Miss Liu is quite accomplished in zither and chess. In the future, I will need your guidance. From her tone, it was obvious that she treated the two of them as the masters that Qin Huayuan had bestowed to her. Yao Qin and Yuqi repeatedly said that they didn't dare. Qin Yining said, I have already ordered Liu Ya to prepare your rooms. Snow Pear Courtyard is too small, so I will have to trouble the two of you to stay in the East Wing for the time being. Yes, thank you Miss Liu. Yao Qin and Yuqi also knew that it was impossible for them to be placed in an important position the moment they entered the family. They were already very satisfied that Qin Yining treated them with courtesy. They followed Liu Ya to the room that Yu Xiong and Ruelan originally stayed in to tidy it up. Qin Yining took a cloak and put it on himself. He called a servant to inform the outside to prepare a horse carriage. Without bringing anyone else, he directly left the house alone. After Liu Ya had settled Yao Qin and Yuqi, she realized that Qin Yining was no longer in the courtyard. Remembering that Qin Yining said that he was going to reconcile the accounts today, Liu Ya hurriedly went to the courtyard to check who was missing. In the end, she realized that Qin Yining actually didn't bring anyone along. Miss would rather not bring anyone along than to bring her along. Yu Xiong and Ruelan had both gone out. Qiu Lu had been put in an important position and was in the storage room. Yao Qin and Yuqi were newcomers and couldn't be immediately dispatched. At this time, she should be brought along. Why was Miss still unwilling to put her in an important position? Liu Ya was so angry that her face turned red. She angrily returned to her room. At this time, Bitong was approaching the back of the storage room. She stood quietly in front of the half-closed door. The side room wasn't big, but there were a lot of silk utensils and brocade boxes piled up inside. In the middle of the floor, there were 2 large chests made of camphor wood that were especially eye-catching. On top of the chests, there were even jewelry boxes that were opened. The jewelry in the boxes were dazzling. She didn't expect fourth young mistress to be so rich when she just returned. After all, she was the owner of Zhao Yun Agency. Her identity wasn't ordinary. Bitong sighed with emotion. She turned her gaze and suddenly, her eyes widened. Qiu Lu was half-turned with her back facing Bitong. She was putting a string of pearls into her bosom. After taking the pearls, she grabbed a handful of jewelry boxes and put them into her bosom. From her angle, she couldn't see what she was holding. She could only vaguely see a blood jade bracelet and an earring that was shining with an emerald light. Bitong's heart thumped wildly. She suddenly felt that the heavens were helping her. If she could take Qiu down, 3 of Qin Yining's servants would be taken away. Miss Huaining would definitely reward her. Thinking of this, Bitong pushed the door open and said angrily, "How dare you? What are you doing? I've seen it all." Qiu was so scared that her hands trembled. She came forward with a pale face and covered Bitong's mouth. "Sister, keep your voice down." "Keep my voice down?" Bitong sneered and said, "Let's go. Follow me to judge in front of Madame Dowager. I'd like to see what else you have to say. It seems that your Snow Pear courtyard is not clean. Ruelan is a thief, and now you're learning from her. Let's go." As Bitong spoke, she pulled Qiu's hand and dragged her out. Qiu grabbed Bitong's wrist with both hands and squatted on the ground, refusing to leave. She lowered her voice and said anxiously, "Sister, don't shout. Listen to me. Fourth Miss hasn't seen these things. She doesn't even know what she has taken. As servants, we work hard and only get a little monthly salary. Except for the food for our family and ourselves, there's nothing left. We're young now, but what about the future?" Feeling that Bitong's grip loosened a little, Qiu simply knelt down and looked up at Bitong, saying, "Sister, think carefully about what I said. For people like us, the only way out is to save some money for ourselves. Only then can we ensure a good life in the future. Fourth Miss has so many things, but she doesn't count them. Sister, as long as you don't say anything, I'm willing to give you half of the things I have taken." Bitong's heart was pierced by Qiu's words. She was not born in the house, but was bought outside to serve. Now she was 16 years old. In a few years, she wanted to ask Madame Dowager to release her from the register. She had a sick old mother at home. Her brother and sister-in-law were married, and she had 2 nephews. Her whole family was relying on her to earn money from a vegetable stall to survive. She didn't want to be married off casually, nor did she want to be a concubine. She only wanted to save enough money to redeem herself and be the first wife of a small family in the future. But the premise was that she had money. This was also the reason why she tried so hard to perform well in front of Qin Huaining, hoping to be rewarded. Any reward from the young ladies was more than what she earned in a year. But even if Qin Huaining rewarded her, it would not be more than half of what Qiu gave her. Such a good opportunity was in front of her. Bitong lowered her head and looked at Qiu suspiciously. Qiu's face was red with anxiety, and tears and snot were flowing down. She looked at her with a pleading face. "Sister Bitong, we are all servants. Why do we have to make things difficult for each other? Why don't we take the opportunity to save money? We still have a good life to live in the future. I beg Sister Bitong to reincarnate. How about I give you more than half and only keep a little? I promise I won't tell anyone about this, Sister Bitong." Bitong knew that Qiu was originally a servant girl in Xingning Garden. She was very honest and dull. Seeing her like this, Bitong believed her. She gritted her teeth and said, "Okay, you give me more than half. Otherwise, I will tell everyone about this." Qiu was overjoyed and quickly stood up. She took out the pearl necklace and stuffed it into Bitong's hands. Then, she took out an agate ring, a blood jade bracelet, a pair of golden rose earrings, a pair of jasper earrings, and a jasper begonia hairpin and stuffed them into Bitong's hands. When Bitong saw so many treasures, and then looked at the agate and jasper rings, her eyes widened. She hurriedly put the things into her clothes. She pointed at Qiu and said, "You listen carefully and keep your mouth shut. I don't dare to say anything. This also involves my life and death." Qiu put away the things in her clothes and said, "Let's go out quickly. It won't be good if people see us." The 2 of them left the storeroom. Qiu hurriedly ran away. Bitong bit her lower lip and pondered. There were so many things. If she took them back and left them in the bedroom and someone found them, how could a servant like her have so many treasures? Then it would be hard to say. Thinking of this, Bitong didn't have time to go back and reply to Qin Huaining. She ran out of the mansion through the corner door of the small kitchen and ran all the way to her own house. Her house was not far from Qin's mansion. After running for about half an hour, she found a courtyard next to the market. There were 3 families living in this courtyard. Her house was in the west wing. These things could only be put at home and let her mother help her store them. Because the 3 families lived in the same courtyard, the courtyard door was never locked during the day. Bitong pushed open the peeling black courtyard door and ran to the west wing, panting. She pushed open the lattice door with a creak. "Mother, I'm back." "You." Bitong suddenly widened her eyes. Her lips trembled and she couldn't say a word. She saw Qin Yining sitting at the head of the table. Behind him stood a well-dressed old man about 50 years old, 2 young servants and 2 men who looked like guards. Bitong's mother was standing at the side, carefully talking to Qin Yining. Chapter 46. Fourth young lady, why are you here? What a rare guest. Bitong's hands and feet were cold and her brain seemed to be filled with lead. She couldn't think. She subconsciously pressed her bulging chest with one hand and avoided eye contact. Qin Yining ignored her and said with a smile, "I came out to inspect the property today and happened to pass by here. I know that Miss Bitong lives here, so I came to visit Auntie He. Your young lady gave you a day off today and allowed you to go home." Bitong's surname was He. Before she entered the mansion, she was called He area. Yes. Bitong felt that her brain was finally working. She smiled wittily and said, "Our young lady gave me some money. I know that my family is nervous, so I sent it home. Miss Bitong is so filial." Qin Yining smiled and said to Auntie He is so lucky. "Master, what are you talking about? It's all because the mansion is willing to promote her. Area is still young and I hope that Master will teach her more." Auntie He was in her 60s and her hair was grey. Hearing Qin Yining's praise, she felt honored and smiled with more wrinkles on her face. Qin Yining smiled and stood up. "Miss Bitong works hard in the mansion. It's rare for her to have a day off. You and your daughter must have something to talk about. I won't disturb you. Master Zhong, leave the things here." Master Zhong was stunned and immediately took out a piece of silver from his sleeve and put it on the table. He said with a smile, "This is a gift from the young lady. It's also a gift from the family Qin." The silver was white and looked like it was 3 or 4 taels. Auntie He quickly knelt down and thanked him. Bitong was also stunned and kowtowed. Was she scaring herself? Did the 4th young lady just pass by and come in? Yes. She just came back. She wanted to make a good name for herself. Qin Yining had already helped Auntie He to stand up. After a few polite words with her, she asked shopkeeper Zhong to leave with the others. Bitong stood there in a daze. When she saw them leave, she was relieved. "Phew. I was scared to death." Bitong patted her chest and sighed. At this time, Auntie He had already sent them out and returned. She smiled and picked up the silver on the table and looked at it. She bit it with her teeth. "This young lady is the Grand Preceptor's newly found daughter. How generous of him to reward me with so much silver in one go." Bitong poured a bowl of water and gulped it down. Thinking of Qin Yining's benevolent face just now, she couldn't help but laugh. "Mother, don't be deceived by her superficial skills. She even beat me up a few days ago. The bruises on my body have not yet subsided. She just came home and wants to gain a virtuous reputation." "Really? I don't think so." Auntie He asked with concern, "How is your injury? Are you still serving 4th young lady?" "4th young lady. Today, I came here to give some things. Miss Huaning gave me a lot of jewelry," Bitong said as she took things out. She took out a string of pearls, an agate ring, gold earrings, and other things. "Mother, help me keep them. Don't let my sister-in-law see them and ask for my nephew. You should at least give your daughter a way out, right? You were so poor that you sold me. For so many years, I took money to the family. In the future, I want to have a family. Mother, please think for me." Auntie He saw the treasures on the table. Her eyes widened and she said, "Oh my God. My Buddha. Miss Huaning is so generous." Before he could finish his words, The door was pushed open with a creak. Bitong was shocked. She was afraid that her brother and sister-in-law had come back. But she didn't have time to hide. When she saw who it was, she was completely stunned. Qin Yining stood at the door with a smile. Auntie I just ordered someone to buy you a bag of rice. Someone will send it over later. I came to tell you. Seeing the jewelry on the table, Qin Yining's face changed. Bitong, where did you get these things? Fourth young lady, these were given to me by my young lady. Bitong smiled stiffly. Qin Yining walked in quickly. He picked up the begonia flower jasper hairpin and sneered, this is one of the jasper hairpins given to me by third aunt. He picked up the pearls and agate ring, this was given to me by Madam Cai, the scholar of the Hanlin Academy. He picked up the gold rose earrings, this was given to me by Imperial Censor Wang's wife. Finally, he turned around and pointed at the teardrop-shaped jasper earrings, this was given to me by Imperial Censor Wang's wife. Bitong, how do you explain this? Bitong's head was buzzing. Her legs gave way and she knelt on the ground. Thinking back to Qiu Lu's appearance in the storeroom today, she felt a chill in her heart. Cold sweat covered her forehead and dripped down her chin. She fell into a trap. Qiu Lu, that bitch, dared to set her up. No, it wasn't just Qiu Lu. Bitong suddenly looked up at Qin Yining. Her heart had already turned cold. Perhaps, Qin Yining had already set a trap for her when those gifts were sent over. He was just waiting for her to fall into it. At that time, she was beside Miss Huaining. She clearly saw that fourth young lady had only opened the gift list and glanced at it. How could she remember who had given her the gifts with just one look? Also, how could she be so sure that Miss Huaining would leave her to follow Qiu Lu? She had thought that fourth young lady was just a strong barbarian. She didn't expect that fourth young lady had a photographic memory and was so scheming. She was able to predict her plan from the beginning. Not only did fourth young lady want to take her down, but she also mocked her in front of the ancestral hall. Oh right, she was the one who indirectly caused Ruelan to leave the residence. She didn't expect that this person would put her to death without batting an eyelid. Bitong's vision turned black and she almost fainted. Auntie, he said in a panic, young lady Madame Dong, are you mistaken? Aria said that these gifts were given to her by Miss Huaining. Do you think there's a misunderstanding? How dare you? Master Zhong's voice was loud like a bell. Auntie, he was so scared that she trembled all over. How could young lady frame your daughter for such a small thing? Since you can tell the origin of those gifts, the gift list and box are naturally still in the residence. If you think that young lady is framing your daughter, we can go and confront the people who sent the gifts one by one. Master Zhong then said disdainfully, my young lady came to visit with good intentions and gave you money and food. She has already given you enough face. I didn't expect that you would repay her kindness with enmity. Auntie, he cried out and only knew how to beg for mercy. Qin Yining frowned and turned to walk out. Master Zhong hurriedly put away the jewelry and followed him out. Young lady, your gifts. Qin Yining took the jewelry and lowered his eyes. Just as I said before, I'll leave the rest to you to deal with this matter. There's only one thing. Don't implicate the family and don't kill anyone. Master Zhong heard this and hurriedly bowed his head. He had a new understanding of Qin Yining's ability to see through people's hearts. Young lady, where are you going now? I'm going to see Ruelan and Miss Tang. Yes, young lady. I'll ask someone to escort you. Master Zhong bowed respectfully and sent the servants and guards to escort Qin Yining back to the Cloud Stepping Inn. Master Zhong went into the room and said to Bitong, do you want to die or live? Bitong looked up with a pale face and said with trembling lips, please show me the way. The Cloud Stepping Inn was not far from the market. It only took a short while to get there by carriage. Qin Yining was escorted by Master Zhong's servants and went straight to a side courtyard at the back. As soon as he stepped onto the steps leading to the main room, the yellow cotton curtain was lifted, and a little Daoist nun in a Daoist robe with a ruddy complexion rushed out. Young lady, you're here. Looking at the little nun's round face, big round eyes and cute appearance, Qin Yining couldn't help but touch her head. Yes, Meng Er. How have you been these days? Young lady, don't worry. I'm fine. Master Zhong takes good care of me. That's right. Tang Meng took Qin Yining's hand and walked into the room. I've almost healed Sister Ruelan's injury. The wound has already scabbed over. After entering the room, Ruelan, who was wearing a white undergarment, got off her shoes and was about to bow to Qin Yining slowly. Young lady, get up quickly. Your wound might split open. Qin Yining hurriedly supported her with both hands and carefully helped her lie down. Looking at her pale face, he sighed. You've suffered. I'm the one who made you suffer. Young lady, don't say that. Ruelan propped herself up and said anxiously, Young lady, although we've only known each other for a short time and there have been misunderstandings, I've already thought it through. No matter who I follow, we're bound together for good or ill. If I had followed someone else, I'm afraid I would have been beaten to death. Young lady, you saved my life and treated me generously with ginseng and cinnamon. I understand everything. Young lady, you're a kind person. You've saved my life. I can't repay you enough in this lifetime. Ruelan then kowtowed to Qin Yining on the couch. I was immature and did something wrong. Young lady, please forgive me. I feel guilty. I only hope that I can serve you for a long time in the future to repay your kindness. All right. I know. Qin Yining supported her and stopped her from kowtowing. Let bygones be bygones. Don't take our misunderstandings to heart. I will definitely seek justice for you for all the grievances you've suffered. Ruelan cried and laughed at the same time. She wiped her face and said, I know young lady will support me. Qin Yining sighed and sat down. She took out the jewelry from her arms. Except for the crabapple jasper hairpin given by her third aunt, she gave the rest to Tang Meng. These are yours. Tang Meng looked at those things strangely and said, Young lady, what do you mean? My father held a banquet in the mansion today. I received many gifts. These were all given by the officials. I know that on the surface, these things are given to me. But in fact, they're given to you through my hands. There are also some herbs, the 4 treasures of the study, a ruler, and other things in the mansion. They were all given by the officials. I'll give them to you when you enter the mansion. Meng keep these things well. At least you have your own money. You won't be in the dark. P.S. Some friends in the comment section said that 1 chapter a day was not enough. The stupid author had to work during the day and had a weekend off. Plus, there were many things to do at home. The time to write was limited. In order to satisfy the requests of the friends, considering the stupid author's poor speed and limited time, I've decided to add more chapters on weekends. From Monday to Friday 9:00 a.m. On Saturday and Sunday, the first chapter will be released at 9:00 a.m. It's decided for the time being. If something comes up, I'll tell you in advance. If you have any valuable suggestions, please leave a comment. I hope the stupid author's efforts can bring joy to everyone. Chapter 47. Tang Meng looked at the jewelry and shook her head with a complicated expression. Miss, you're an upright person. We've never met before, but you came to save me with sincerity. Not only can I not repay you with anything, but I've also brought you trouble. I'm already very grateful that you don't blame me. Take these jewelry as a gift from me to Miss. Consider it my thanks. Miss, please accept it. That won't do. These are the good intentions of the Qing people to you. They are the good karma that your father made before. I will never accept them. Let's forget about the past. In the future, when you come to the mansion with me, there will be times when I will be a burden to you. I only hope that we can support each other. As for your personal life, I won't touch it no matter what. As Qin Yining spoke, he stuffed the jewelry into Tang Meng's hands. Listen to me. It's always beneficial to have more personal life. Tang Meng and Qin Yining argued for a long time, but in the end, they couldn't win. She was not a stickler for formalities. She was very touched that Qin Yining treated her so sincerely. After accepting the jewelry, Tang Meng bowed to Qin Yining. I'm alone in this world. I can only repay your kindness with loyalty. Qin Yining smiled and helped her up. It's fate that brought us together. Let's support each other and live a good life. There is still a long way to go. They looked at each other and smiled. Although they were master and servant, there were many emotions in their hearts. There was gratitude and friendship. Seeing that the matter was settled, Qin Yining told Ruelan to recover as soon as possible. He called Master Zhong's servant and asked him to prepare a carriage. "I'm going to Ding General Manor." The servant nodded and left. Tang Meng saw that Qin Yining didn't have anyone to serve him. She originally wanted to follow him. Qin Yining smiled and said, "I'll arrange for you to return to the secular world in these 2 days. Then, it will be justified for you to follow me. Ruelan's injury needs your treatment. You can stay with her for now." Although Tang Meng was still wearing a Taoist robe, she had already regarded Qin Yining as her master. She nodded obediently. "Don't worry, miss. I've been learning medicine from my father since I was young. Treating a flesh wound is nothing to me." He then grabbed Qin Yining's hand and looked at it. He smiled and said, "Miss, there are quite a few scars on your hand. You must have suffered a lot in the past, right? In the next 2 days, I will concoct the ointment to remove scars. If Miss applies it to a box, I guarantee that your hand will be as good as new. I even have ways to treat Miss's skin." Which woman didn't like to be beautiful? Sometimes, Qin Yining felt that she was too rough looking at the girls in the manor. She was exposed to the wind and the sun. Not to mention the scars and calluses on her hands, even the skin on her face was rougher than other girls. It was just that it was not obvious because she was young. Now that Tang Meng said that she had a solution, Qin Yining said happily, "Then I'm counting on you." Tang Meng patted her chest and promised, "Don't worry, I'm the best at fiddling with these things." Qin Yining gave Tang Meng and Ruelan some more instructions before he left the Cloud Treading Inn and took a carriage to Ding General Duke's mansion. After lunch, it was time for Duchess Ding to listen to the nanny's replies and to check the cards. They were busy discussing in the warm room. Mother Bao quietly came to Duchess Ding's side and whispered, "Old madam, my grandaunt is here." Duchess Ding frowned. "Tell her to go back and rest after she's full. It's not enough for her to make a fuss in the room. We are busy here. How can we have time to pay attention to her?" "Mother, what are you talking about?" Before Mother Bao went out to pass the message, the Sun Clan had already lifted the warm curtain and entered the door. She ignored the nannies around her and strode to Duchess Ding's side. "Mother, why don't you think Qin Meng has come to pick me up yet?" Duchess Ding's veins on her forehead jumped when she heard this. She waved her hand helplessly. Mother Bao immediately understood and left with the nannies, leaving the warm room to the mother and daughter. Duchess Ding said, "You are anxious now. Who asked you to come back to your parents' home? In my opinion, it's all your fault this time. You made a mistake yourself. Do you expect others to bow their heads and admit defeat? If you are smart, go back and be the wife of the imperial tutor. Don't wear away the affection between husband and wife. You will cry when the time comes. Mother, are you my biological mother? Why do you only know how to scold me every time you see me? Why don't you see what Qin Meng has done?" Duchess Ding felt tired. She stroked her forehead and said tiredly, "Sister Han, you are not a child anymore. Do you still need me to tell you some things? Your mother-in-law and your husband didn't target you at all. When they talked about Sister Yi, you were ashamed. Do you want to use your identity as the young lady of Ding General Duke's mansion to suppress them? Don't forget that you are the daughter-in-law of the family Qin. Did I do something wrong? Sister Yi went out to see an outsider, and I disciplined my daughter. Qin Meng not only waved my hand away, but also almost pushed me down. He also scolded me, saying that my rules were not good, but I could be so cruel to my daughter. He also said that I should learn the rules." The Sun Clan wiped her tears. "What did I do wrong to him? He actually humiliated me in front of everyone. My rules are not good, but are they worse than a girl who came back from the mountains? He said that Sister Yi made a mistake, and I disciplined her for him. He actually scolded me." Duchess Ding had been hearing Madame Sun's complaints so much that her ears were about to grow calluses. At this moment, listening to her crying, if this was not her biological daughter, Duchess Ding really wanted to throw her out to fend for herself. "Sister Han, you have to know that Sister Yi is not only Qin Meng's daughter, but also your daughter. Your husband cherishes your children. Shouldn't you be happy? How can there be a mother like you who dares to compare yourself with your own daughter? I don't think you're crying tears, but brain matter. Has your brain been empty for a long time? Mother, how can you say that about me? Am I wrong? I have been observing you for the past few days. Your mind is not clear, and you refuse to listen to others. You only know how to cry and make a fuss. Are you waiting for Qin Meng's sedan chair to carry you back? Let me tell you, Qin Meng is now the imperial tutor. If you don't go back, concubine will ride on your head. You are stupid and muddle-headed. Qin Meng Huaining instigated you. You are in your 40s, but you still fell into a trap. You still have the face to cry. I think you should cry your head off. You are so stupid that you don't look like my daughter. The Sun clan whimpered after being reprimanded in front of everyone. Duchess Ding's temples throbbed with pain. She stood up and was about to go out. At this moment, there was a sound of footsteps outside. Mother Bao said with a smile in the corridor, "Old madam, look who is here." The warm curtain was lifted, and Qin Yining came in with a smile. The orange-red brocade cloak on her body reflected her fair and rosy face. She was as beautiful as the newly bloomed plum blossoms in the backyard. "Grandmother." Qin Yining bowed. Duchess Ding helped her up in surprise. "My sister Yi, why are you here on such a cold day?" Qin Yining looked at the Sun clan and winked at Duchess Ding. She took off her cloak and handed it to Mother Bao. Then, she went to the Sun clan and bowed. "Greetings, madam." The Sun clan was angry at this time. When they thought that the cause of this incident was Qin Yining went out of the mansion without permission, they naturally didn't like the people they saw. They wiped their tears and snorted. Duchess Ding frowned when she saw this, but she stood still. She wanted to see what Qin Yining wanted to do. Qin Yining saw that the Sun clan's eyes were red from crying and they still ignored her. She knew that the Sun clan hadn't come back to their senses after 7 or 8 days, so she had to kneel properly. "Madam, don't be angry. It's all my fault." The Sun clan snorted coldly. "You still know that you're wrong? Then how dare you go out to see a man? You even went to Prince Ning's mansion alone to ask for him. How dare you?" At that time, I was eager to save her and wanted to do my best. I didn't expect that Prince Ning would directly give Miss Tang to me. But it was because of this that my father could become the Grand Preceptor. It can be considered a blessing in disguise. Qin Yining lowered her head and replied. After hearing this, the Sun clan didn't understand what she meant at all. Hearing this, Duchess Ding nodded, thinking that she had not misjudged Qin Yining. She went forward to help Qin Yining up and said, "The ground is cold. Just sit down and talk. Your mother is angry now. There are some things she can't figure out. You can tell her and she will understand." "Yes." Qin Yining smiled gratefully at Duchess Ding, and then told the Sun clan about Prince Ning's plan, the change of the situation caused by Tang Meng's incident, Grand Preceptor Cao's dismissal, and the reason why Qin Huiyuan could become the Grand Preceptor. The Sun clan stopped crying and looked at Qin Yining in astonishment. "Did your father teach you these words?" "It's all my own idea." Qin Yining smiled shyly and said, "I also thought about it randomly. I don't know if it's right or not. And I think that if I become the Grand Preceptor, I will immediately report to Prince Ning." Duchess Ding's eyes lit up when she heard this. She asked with a smile, "Why do you say that?" Qin Yining said with a smile, "The Emperor will not like to see his officials form cliques. Prince Ning is originally a military Wang Yi and has a certain prestige in the army. If he is on good terms with the new Grand Preceptor, how can the Emperor rest assured? I think even if my father doesn't do this, Prince Ning will impeach him again. Only when the two of them are not close can the balance of the court be maintained." "Good girl." Duchess Ding pulled Qin Yining over and held her in her arms. She patted her on the back and said, "You're right. Your grandfather just told me today that your father participated in King Ning's funeral. I really didn't misjudge you. You are a smart girl." The Sun clan was stunned and looked at Qin Yining in a daze. Duchess Ding sighed when she saw this. Chapter 48. Qin Yining's pleading made the Sun clan's heart waver. She didn't expect that there were so many intertwined relationships secretly influencing each other in a matter that she thought was Qin Yining's fault. She found it difficult to understand such a complicated matter, but Qin Yining could figure it out by himself. Looking at Duchess Ding's appreciative and happy smiling face, the Sun Clan knew how much Qin Yining liked him now. The Sun Clan had never felt that they were stupid. As a woman of the inner residence, she had always thought that it was enough to take care of the inner residence. Now, she felt that Qin Yining's matter had enlightened her. The Sun Clan murmured, "I didn't expect that the affairs of the inner residence would be affected by the previous dynasty." Hearing this, Duchess Ding wanted to hold her forehead again. Isn't it obvious? The wind in the imperial court moves the grass in the inner residence. You've met Qin Meng, who is kind. If it were other families, you would know how the affairs of the imperial court would affect the inner residence if there were more concubines from different families in the inner residence. Sister Yi has begged you so much. Why don't you agree to go back? The Sun Clan looked down at Qin Yining, who was full of expectation, and nodded slowly. Well, for the sake of your sincerity and for fear of embarrassing your father in front of the Crown Prince, I'd better go back. Hearing this, Duchess Ding breathed a sigh of relief. The Sun Clan didn't understand, but she did. Qin Yining came here to give the Sun Clan a way out. This time, it was the Sun Clan's fault. Not only did they take the initiative to stir up trouble, but they also offended old Madam Qin and Qin Meng. It was impossible to count on the in-laws to pick them up, so they could only find a way out themselves. If Qin Yining didn't come to kneel and beg, Duke Ding's mansion would have to give them a way out sooner or later. At that time, they would have to lower their status and embarrass the Sun Clan in front of the family Qin. Thinking of this, Duchess Ding couldn't help but say, "Calm down and think about it. Sister Yi is so sensible that she wronged herself to give you a way out. But what about the one in the mansion?" Sister Yi came immediately after she was released from confinement. The one in the mansion wasn't confined. Why didn't she say anything when you lived in her maiden home for so many days? She didn't even send someone to ask. When you left her home, she said she didn't want to see you. But when you really went back to her maiden home, she shrank her neck and didn't care about you. Both daughters are yours, but you should have seen clearly what kind of characters they have, right? Speaking of this, Duchess Ding helped Qin Yining up. Sister Yi, come with me. Your mother needs to be alone. Let's go inside and sit. Qin Yining looked back at the Sun Clan worriedly. Then she followed Duchess Ding to the inner room, leaving the outer room to the Sun Clan. The Sun Clan kept replaying Duchess Ding's words in her mind, and her expression changed a few times. Qin Yining and Duchess Ding were sitting next to each other on the Ru Yi inscribed Arhat bed by the window. Duchess Ding took Qin Yining's hand and said, "Sister Yi, you are a good child. Grandmother knows you have been wronged." Qin Yining shook her head repeatedly. "How can I be wronged? I am very satisfied to be able to come home and serve my family. I know my mother's dilemma. Even if her blood flows in my body, it is difficult for her to accept the fact that her biological son was swapped. Moreover, my mother has been trying to accept me. This time, I did make a mistake and made my mother angry. That's why she is like this. You child." Duchess Ding's dry and warm hand touched Qin Yining's satin long hair that was draped over her back. Her heart felt as if it had been rubbed by someone. She had been wronged, but she kept saying good things for her biological mother. Perhaps it was because they were close, or perhaps it was because they were really fated. Duchess Ding really loved Qin Yining in her heart at this time. Qin Yining thought for a moment and said, "Grandmother, I have 2 more things to tell you. You are experienced and knowledgeable, so you must know what to do best." Duchess Ding had always been patient with the younger generation's advice, not to mention that it was Qin Yining, who she liked. Duchess Ding smiled lovingly, took Qin Yining's hand, and put the brass hand warmer carved with rose flowers in Qin Yining's hand. "What's the problem? Tell me." Qin Yining smiled gratefully and put the hand warmer in Duchess Ding's hand. The two of them held a hand warmer together. "Grandmother, it's like this. I've arranged for Miss Tang to stay at the Cloud Treading Inn for the time being. She's already wholeheartedly accepted me as her master and will serve me in the future. She's well versed in medicine, so I'd like to bring her along with me. I want to find a time to renounce secular life for her. Grandmother, do you think this is a good arrangement? Are you worried that your father won't like the relationship between the Tang family and the Qinglu family? It was easy to talk to smart people. Qin Yining nodded with a smile. Yes, I'm also afraid that it will affect the relationship between the Duke's mansion, the Cao family, and Prince Ning. Duchess Ding said with a smile, you don't have to worry. Now the situation in the imperial court is stable, and Prince Ning said that he would give her to you. I think the musical house won't come to ask for her without the emperor's decree. As for the Cao family, although Grand Tutor Cao is no longer the Grand Tutor, his power in the imperial court is still there. Their artillery fire is now directed at Prince Ning and your father, so they won't care about a little girl like you for the time being. Miss Tang is a poor child, and you two are destined to meet. If she is willing to treat you sincerely, it's good for you to take her with you. As for other things, we can take one step at a time. In fact, what Duchess Ding said had been hovering in Qin Yining's mind for a long time. Although she had thought about it, the words from Duchess Ding's mouth inexplicably made her feel at ease. Yes, I see. Qin Yining burst into a big smile, and the small dimples on her cheeks made her look extremely lovely. With your help, I feel like I have a backbone. Silly girl. Duchess Ding put her arm around Qin Yining's shoulder and shook it. This child had been alone for many years, and she had to make her own decisions, whether big or small. But she lived alone outside. She was afraid that every decision would affect her future and life. No matter how smart this child was, no matter how correct the path she chose was, it was inevitable that she would panic when she was alone, right? She analyzed in this way, but she had never had anyone to rely on over the years. No wonder she showed such a satisfied smile in her arms now. Her smile and dependence made Duchess Ding feel sour and numb in her heart. Her eyes were hot, and she felt so distressed that she was about to cry. Qin Yining didn't notice Duchess Ding's situation, so she turned and said, Grandma, I have one more thing to ask you. What is it? Just say it, Duchess Ding said with a smile. Qin Yining roughly told her how Ruelan left the mansion. Duchess Ding frowned as she listened, and the wrinkles between her eyebrows became deeper. I didn't expect Qin Huaining to be like this. She was disregarding human life for the sake of her own momentary pleasure. We have never had such a girl in our family who can frame innocent people. Duchess Ding stood up and paced a few steps. She frowned and said, Sister Yi, let me deal with this matter. Qin Huaining was the adopted daughter of the Sun clan. No matter what she did, others would not say that Qin Huaining was bad. They would only say that the Sun clan's upbringing was not good. Although she scolded the Sun clan, as a mother, she had to think about her daughter. Qin Yining immediately understood what Duchess Ding was thinking. She nodded and said, Grandma, you can teach Miss Huaining however you want. But I already have a plan this time. Duchess Ding raised her eyebrows and looked at Qin Yining. Qin Yining told her about her arrangements. Finally, she stuck out her tongue and said, When the time comes, I'll have to use your name to speak. You. Duchess Ding chuckled. She liked Qin Yining's way of not forgetting to save people's lives when she fought back. She smiled and tapped Qin Yining's forehead. Let you, little girl, do whatever you want. Yes, thank you, Grandma. Qin Yining stood up and bowed with a smile. Looking at the delicate and pretty girl in front of her, Duchess Ding liked her a little more. One was kind and filial, while the other was selfish and vicious. Although these two children were both smart and beautiful, when comparing their characters, she couldn't help but favor Qin Yining. Mother. At this time, the Sun clan came to the door of the inner room with an embarrassed expression. Duchess Ding felt depressed when she saw the Sun clan's appearance. She said angrily, What do you want? Mother, I've ordered people to pack up everything. The implication was that they could go back to Qin's mansion at any time. Duchess Ding couldn't help rolling her eyes. She had been anxious to go back for a long time, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. This time, Qin Yining cooperated and gave her a way out, so she naturally took advantage of it. Go. Go back and think about what I said. Yes. The Sun clan lowered his head. Duchess Ding ordered people to prepare the carriage and personally tidied up Qin Yining's cloak. Then she said, I'll arrange for you to take Miss Tang to return to the secular world. The Taoist temple Miss Tang will go to is called the Immortal Lady Temple. It's not far from the capital city, and I know the abbot. Well, I'll send someone to pick you up tomorrow after I've arranged it. I'll also go to the Immortal Lady Temple to perform the ritual. Qin Yining looked at Duchess Ding in surprise and said, Grandmother, how can I do that? I have to trouble you to go all the way. What are you afraid of? I'm also bored. I want to go out for a walk without so many people. It's quiet. You don't have to think too much. When the time comes, you can come with me so that no one will bully you. Duchess Ding thought for a moment and said, I'll only take you with me tomorrow. I won't take anyone else with me. The Sun Clan said shyly, Mother, you won't even take me with you? Why should I take you with me? You don't have to make me angry in front of me. Tomorrow, I'll take my sister Yi out to relax. Qin Yining nodded with a smile and happily said goodbye to Duchess Ding. He followed the Sun Clan all the way back to the family Qin in the carriage. He couldn't help laughing on the way. Chapter 49. The carriage slowly stopped at the side door of Qin Manor. The Sun Clan looked out through the gap in the curtains, their expressions somewhat stiff. Qin Yining observed the Sun Clan's expression and knew that the Sun Clan must have felt that she had lost face by taking the initiative to come back. If she had known this would happen, why did she do it in the first place? It was no wonder that Duchess Ding would be so angry. The Sun Clan was already at this age, yet they still acted so casually. She was really lucky to be able to sit firmly in the position of the Prime Minister's wife for so many years. Her mother-in-law and sisters-in-law also got along well. But even so, Qin Yining wouldn't stand idly by and watch the Sun Clan's matter. Madam, don't be angry. Daughter already knows she was wrong. Qin Yining deliberately misinterpreted Madam Sun's embarrassment and coyness as anger. She said with a smile, I will definitely explain clearly to Madam Dowager later. Madam Dowager will definitely be relieved when she knows that you came back to teach your daughter. She won't worry about teaching her daughter anymore. The Sun Clan was stunned and didn't immediately react. However, Mother Jin, who was serving on the side, laughed. Her impression of Qin Yining had been reversed. She respected Qin Yining as much as she doubted him in the past. Madam, look, fourth young miss is really considerate. Don't be angry because of this matter. Besides, you are a family. You and Master have been husband and wife for so many years. How can there be a hurdle that you can't cross? Men love face, so it will be over if you give in a little. Why should I give in? The Sun Clan muttered softly, but didn't get angry. Qin Yining saw through the Sun Clan's thoughts. He thought for a moment and hinted, since Madam isn't angry, let's go into the manor, okay? You can go back to Xingning Garden to recuperate after you see old Madam. After all, you haven't been home for so many days. The Sun Clan's spirit shivered when she heard this. She wanted to go back and see which concubine Qin Huayuan was resting in while she wasn't at home. Let's go back to the mansion. Without hesitation, the Sun Clan instructed the maidservant following them to knock on the door. When Mother Jin saw this, she smiled and nodded at Qin Yining. Qin Yining smiled back warmly. After the carriage entered the residence, the Sun Clan and Qin Yining switched to the small, oiled carriage and only alighted when it reached the second gate. As soon as she entered Ci Xiao Garden, she saw the head maidservant Yu Yi talking to the little maidservant. Qin Yining smiled and said, Sister Yu Yi is busy. When Yu Yi saw that it was Qin Yining, a smile appeared on her face. When she saw Mother Jin, Cai Ju, and Cai Lan returning with the Sun Clan, she immediately smiled and bowed, Greetings to First Madam and Fourth Miss Old Madam is currently free. Please come in. As she spoke, she led the way. The maidservants in the corridor had already informed the house. Two maidservants lifted the warm curtains and Ji Xiong and Mammy Qin came out to welcome them. Qin Yining helped the Sun Clan into the house and took off their cloaks. Mammy Qin and Ji Xiong immediately smiled and took them. When Qin Yining raised his eyes, he saw Bai Tong. Bai Tong didn't dare to meet Qin Yining's eyes. When she saw Qin Yining looking over, she quickly lowered her head and couldn't help but tremble. Qin Yining pretended that he didn't see and helped the Sun Clan pass by the black screen with the words beaming with joy and into the inner room. The furnishings in the room had changed again. The originally cool-colored chairs, tablecloths, and pillows were all changed to orangutan red. The fresh flowers in the vase were also red. The red flowers accompanied the snow-white flower goblets, giving people a festive feeling. It matched the joyous occasion of Qin Huayuan's promotion. Old Madam was wearing a cyan brocade jacket embroidered with large red-crowned crane clouds. She sat cross-legged on the ahut bed by the window and smoked. Qin Huaining was at the side holding an exquisite sputum box to serve the Old Madam. When she saw Qin Yining and the Sun Clan coming back together, she looked a little surprised. Qin Yining's gaze swept over the astonished Qin Huaining. He helped the Sun Clan to kneel down and saluted the Old Madam properly. Sun Clan held back her embarrassment and said, "Old Madam, your daughter-in-law is back." The Old Madam took a puff from her tobacco pipe and snorted coldly, leaving the Sun Clan to roll her eyes. Sun Clan's face instantly flushed red. Even her ears and neck were red. She gritted her teeth and held back her humiliation. "Your daughter-in-law was too impulsive a few days ago. I hope the Old Madam won't take it to heart." "Take it to heart?" The Old Madam casually knocked the ashes into the sputum box. The brass tobacco pipe and the porcelain made a loud sound. "If I took it to heart, wouldn't I have been angered to death by you these past few years? Sun Clan, tell me, these past few years in the family Qin, have I, as your mother-in-law, ever made you angry? Or is there something in my family Qin that doesn't suit you? What is it that you are dissatisfied with that you keep stirring up trouble every few days? Tell me. Is it that my son isn't worthy of you? Or is it that you don't like me, this old woman?" Sun Clan gritted her teeth and didn't say a word. The Old Madam scolded her again. "You have been married for so many years, but you didn't give birth to a son for Meng Ji. Tell me, have I ever blamed you for anything? That day, you made trouble out of nothing. Every word of yours poked at my heart. What do you want this old woman to do?" The Old Madam threw the tobacco pipe away, feeling wronged. Qin Huaining immediately caught it and carefully extinguished it. Then, he took a handkerchief to help the Old Madam wipe her hands. The Old Madam raised her eyes to look at Qin Huaining and said, "Tell me, these past few years, you didn't know how to teach your children. I carefully raised Sister Hui under my eyes. You didn't know how to get along with your sisters-in-law. How many good words did I say for you in front of old second and old third daughters-in-law behind your back? You can't even see these. Even if others are good to you, do you take it for granted? In any case, Meng Ji is an important official of the imperial court. You, a woman, can't share your husband's worries. Not only did you repeatedly find trouble, but you also quarreled with him face to face. Where did the 3 obedience and 4 virtues that you learned go? Is this the upbringing of your Duke Ding's residence?" Sun Clan cried out of grievance. She only thought of one question in her heart: should she endure? Or should she go back to her maternal family now? She didn't need to look at these people's faces anymore. After the Old Madam reprimanded her, her heart felt much better. Seeing Sun Clan crying non-stop, she snorted, "What? You still feel wronged? Old Madam." Seeing that Old Madam had scolded her and vented her anger, Qin Yining saluted and said, "Please don't be angry. It's all my fault this time. Madam did this because she was eager to teach her children." Madam often discussed the experience of teaching children with grandmother in Ding general manner these days. She came back in a hurry after she figured it out. "Madam, please think about the harmony of the family and don't be angry." The Old Madam's impression of Qin Yining was no longer the same as when she had just returned to the manor. Because Qin Huayuan raised Qin Yining like a son, the Old Madam also attached more importance to Qin Yining. The Old Madam knew that the Sun Clan had a strong backer like Duke Ding's residence. She couldn't do anything to her. Since she would continue to accept her in the future, it wouldn't be good to speak too much. Thinking of this, the Old Madam said, "Forget it. This matter is over. There won't be a next time." "Yes. Thank you, Old Madam." Sun Clan bowed to the Old Madam and truly breathed a sigh of relief. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Thank you, Old Madam, for your kindness. Forget it. You only know how to sweet-talk. The old madam smiled lovingly. Qin Huaining, who was at the side, saw Qin Yining persuade the old madam with just a few words. Originally, there was still some hope in her heart, but now, it was completely shattered. It seemed that the old madam had really accepted Qin Yining and liked him to the extent that she would listen to him. There was no room for regret. How was she going to live in the future? Qin Huaining anxiously bit her lip and immediately went forward to support the Sun Clan's arm. Mother, how have you been these days? There were some matters in the residence that I couldn't get away from. I didn't have time to visit you. Sun Clan's heart had been circling around Duchess Ding's words. At this time, when she looked at Qin Huaining again, her gaze became much more complicated. Matters? What matters? Qin Huaining glanced at the old madam and then looked at Qin Yining. She forced a smile, as if she had to swallow her own bitterness to protect others. She only said, "It's nothing." First, she said there was something. When the Sun Clan asked, she said it was nothing. This was obviously a trick to arouse the Sun Clan's interest. As long as the Sun Clan was interested, they would naturally investigate. However, no matter how the Sun Clan investigated, the rumors outside were unfavorable to Qin Yining. These days, the Sun Clan wasn't at home. The unbearable rumors outside would reduce the Sun Clan's favorable impression of her. Qin Yining saw it clearly, but he didn't express his opinion. He only smiled as usual. The Sun Clan was also somewhat curious. However, because the old madam was in front of them, they didn't ask directly. They only thought of asking Qin Huaining later when they went out. Qin Huaining saw that the Sun Clan didn't answer the question as usual. He was somewhat annoyed and asked, "Mother, why did you come with Sister Yining? Did you meet on the way?" It was another trap. Qin Yining was about to interrupt, but the Sun Clan was one step ahead of him and said heartlessly, "Sister Yi went to the Duke's residence to kowtow and admit her mistake. That's why I came back." The old madam frowned when she heard this. Qin Huaining caught the old madam's expression. He felt proud in his heart, but he nodded calmly, "So that's how it is." In the end, it was convenient for Sister Yining to go out. She left just like that. He hinted that Qin Yining didn't reply to the old madam when he went out. Qin Huaining wanted to use this matter to criticize Qin Yining in front of the old madam. But now, he could say it just like that. However, Qin Yining knew that this sentence would definitely cause the old madam to be dissatisfied with the Sun Clan. The old madam's face sank as she said, "You came back after Sister Yi went to kowtow and admit her mistake? What, if Sister Yi didn't invite you, you wouldn't come back?" The Sun Clan was startled. He immediately shook his head and said, "Don't misunderstand, old madam. It was just a coincidence. Even if Sister Yi didn't go, I would still come back." The old madam didn't feel like listening to the Sun Clan anymore. She waved her hand impatiently and said, "Enough, enough, enough. Go and rest. Presumably, you don't feel like coming to see an old woman like me. In the future, you don't have to go to see me in the morning and at night." The Sun Clan's face paled. Then, he looked angrily at Qin Huaining. The dissatisfaction and suspicion that had accumulated over the past few days all exploded at this moment. The Sun Clan's face darkened. It took a lot of effort not to shout in front of the old madam. She gritted her teeth and said, "Since that's the case, then this daughter-in-law will take her leave. Sister Hui, Sister Yi, come with me. I also brought something for you." After saying this, she turned and left. Qin Huaining's face paled. He nervously followed her. Chapter 50. The Sun Clan kept their mouths shut the entire way, as if they would say something unpleasant the moment they opened their mouths. Seeing the Sun Clan like this, Mother Jin, Cai Ju, and Cai Lan, who were accompanying them, kept quiet out of fear. The two maidservants supported the Sun Clan on both sides, afraid that she would bump into them if she walked too fast. Mother Jin secretly fell back a few steps and gave Qin Yining a look. Qin Yining nodded knowingly when he saw it. Mother Jin sighed in relief as if she had found a pillar of support. In the past few days, she had understood that Qin Yining had a special place in the eyes of the old madam and Duchess Ding. In addition, her master was not particularly smart and sensible. If she wanted to continue living peacefully in the future, she could not be enemies with Qin Yining. As for what her niece had said, it was for her own master and herself. She was not naive enough to think that an adopted daughter who could not even protect herself could give her a good future. Qin Huaining brought Mama Cai, Bai Tong, and Bai Dao to walk at the back. She clearly saw the interaction between Mother Jin and Qin Yining. At this time, Qin Huaining's expression was very ugly. Nothing that had happened in the past few days was completely beneficial to her. She could only watch as Qin Yining stepped on her head step by step. No matter how she tried to please the old madam and the Sun clan, the blood relationship would become a wall between them. Qin Huaining laughed self-deprecatingly. She was originally brought here. How could these people treat her sincerely? When they returned to Xingning Garden, the Sun clan ignored the servants who were greeting them. She angrily lifted the curtain and entered the room. She sat down heavily at the head of the table and asked, "Sister Hui, what happened to you?" Qin Huaining bit her lower lip and frowned in grievance. She slowly walked forward and knelt down in front of the Sun clan. "Mother, don't be angry. Don't hurt your body. It's all my fault." The Sun clan felt suffocated by her words. She then looked at Qin Huaining's aggrieved expression. It was as if she, her mother, was the one who had bullied her. She felt even more annoyed and raised her hand to slap her. Slap. Qin Huaining's head was knocked to the side by the slap. "Who allowed you to talk to me like that? Why, you put on an act in front of old madam, and now you still want to put on an act in front of me." Qin Huaining covered her face in disbelief and looked up at the Sun clan. 2 lines of tears slid down her cheeks and she choked with sobs. "Mother, how could you do this to me?" The members of the Sun clan looked at Qin Huaining's aggrieved expression and became even angrier. They angrily rebuked, "You're aggrieved? Do you think everyone in the world is a fool? You incited me again and again and sowed discord behind my back. Do you think I didn't know that you were sizing me up? I raised you and treated you like my own flesh and blood, but you harmed me instead. Not to mention other things, the words you said in front of old madam just now, were they something you should have said?" Qin Huaining's aggrieved expression was replaced by fear. How could it be like this? The Sun clan had only returned home for a few days. How could it be that when they came back, it was as if they had changed into another person? They actually came back to their senses so easily. It must have been instigated by Duchess Ding. Qin Huaining's sense of crisis was unprecedentedly strong. In the past, no matter how powerful Qin Huaining was, she was confident that she could control the Sun clan and old madam. However, in such a short time, she found that she could no longer control these people. In the past, the Sun clan was the most obedient to her words. As long as she moved them emotionally, the Sun clan was the most easily moved. But now, "Mother, don't misunderstand. Enough." The Sun clan didn't want to listen to Qin Huaining's refutation at all. "I saw it with my own eyes. You dared to instigate discord in front of old madam and make old madam hate me. What good will that do for you? Qin Huaining, I'm so disappointed in you." As the Sun clan spoke, she also cried with grievance. "What kind of life have I lived all these years? You followed me and saw it with your own eyes. Now you treat me like this. What do you want me to do?" The Sun clan felt wronged, and Qin Huaining felt even more wronged. She fell to the ground and covered her swollen face as she sobbed. Nurse Jin, Cai Ju, Bai Tong, and the others hurriedly went forward to comfort her. Qin Huaining quietly left the room and returned to Snowpear Courtyard. It wasn't that she didn't feel sorry for the Sun clan, but she felt that she couldn't control her. Even someone as intelligent as Duchess Ding couldn't teach the Sun clan well. What could she, a little girl, do? As for Qin Huaining, she deserved to be beaten. She even felt that she didn't get beaten enough. It didn't make sense that only she could be beaten, but Qin Huaining couldn't. Qin Yining didn't bother to pay attention to the situation of the mother and daughter in Xingning Garden. She just lived her life peacefully as usual and slept well at night. Early the next morning, Qin Yining went to pay his respects to old madam as usual. Originally, Old Madam had angrily said yesterday that the Sun Clan didn't need to come to the Sun Clan anymore. Qin Yining was worried that the Sun Clan would take it seriously. As a result, he saw the Sun Clan at Old Madam's place today. Although the Sun Clan wasn't very warm to Old Madam, they didn't do anything wrong. Qin Yining was relieved when he saw them. On the other hand, half of Qin Huining's face was swollen like a pig's head again, and even the corners of her mouth were bruised. She successfully entertained Qin Yining. It seemed that after she left Xingning Garden yesterday, Qin Huining was beaten again. This person had evil intentions and repeatedly harmed others. Even if she was beaten, she deserved it. Qin Huining looked like she was about to cry when she saw everyone today, as if she had suffered a great grievance in Xingning Garden. Sixth young lady frequently glared at her. Qin Yining didn't bother to pay attention to her attitude. Qin Huining's behavior today was tantamount to digging her own grave. In the past, everyone trusted her character, so naturally, they couldn't bear to see her being wronged. But now, Dowager Duchess and the Sun Clan had doubts about her character. On the basis of their doubts, how could they feel pity for her? Qin Huining's self-righteous scheme would only fail. She could still run amok now, but it wasn't time yet. Qin Yining wasn't anxious at all. Dowager Duchess, the head maidservant Ji Xiong entered the room and said with a smile, "Madame Ding's personal servant, Mema Bao, has come." Everyone in the room was startled when they heard this. Dowager Duchess sat up straight and said with a smile, "Quickly invite her in." As she spoke, she didn't forget to glance sideways at the Sun Clan. The Sun Clan gritted their teeth and lowered their eyes, suppressing their anger. At this time, Mema Bao entered the room under the guidance of Mami Qin. Seeing that the room was full of young ladies and masters, she bowed to them one by one. The young ladies didn't dare to be arrogant and didn't accept Mema Bao's bow, so they turned to greet her. Dowager Duchess said with a smile, "Why did Mema Bao come today? Could it be that she came to apologize again?" Replying to old Madam Qin, "Our madam is going to Xianjiyu Temple to perform the ritual ceremony today. She specially instructed this servant to come and ask for your grace. Our madam wants to take Miss Biao out to relax." Dowager Duchess was startled when she heard this and then smiled, "That's easy. I'll ask the young lady to pack up and follow you." She then asked, "Is your madam's health well?" "Thanks to your good fortune, everything is well." Mema Bao smiled and chatted with Dowager Duchess. Her attitude was respectful, but not humble. She also didn't mention the Sun Clan's return, nor did she act like she wanted to apologize. She didn't lose any face for Duke Ding's mansion. Qin Yining took the cloak that Mami Qin brought and put it on. She then took the small brass hand warmer and the light green embroidered stove cover and held it in her hands. When Mema Bao and Dowager Duchess finished their conversation, she smiled and bowed to Dowager Duchess. "Dowager Duchess, granddaughter will go out first." Dowager Duchess smiled and waved her hand, "Go. Take good care of your grandmother." Mema Bao bowed again with a smile and then respectfully retreated. Qin Yining followed her around the screen and went to the door. Seeing that Qin Huining had also put on the light blue cloak and was following her, she lightly tugged on Mema Bao's sleeve. Mema Bao turned around and saw that Qin Huining was also following her. She said with a faint smile, "Blame this old servant for being clumsy. I didn't make it clear. Duke Ding's madam wanted to bring Miss Biao to Xianjiyu Temple to perform the ritual. She didn't say that she would bring Miss Huining. They were in front of the door and separated by a screen." Her voice clearly traveled into the room. Qin Yining heard a few muffled chuckles and blushed for Qin Huining. Qin Huining's originally swollen face had now turned the color of an eggplant. Her eyes were filled with tears as she looked accusingly at Mema Bao. Sun Clan couldn't bear to see her like this. She went around the screen and chased after her. "I won't go out with mother today. Why don't we let Sister Hui go as well? The two sisters can take care of each other." Mema Bao smiled and said, "Madam, it's not that this old servant doesn't want to listen to your orders. It's Duke Ding's madam's order to only bring Miss Biao out. Our Duke Ding's mansion only has one proper Miss Biao. You should know this in your heart. If you want Miss Huining to go as well, then why don't you personally explain the situation to Duke Ding's madam?" Don't make it difficult for this old servant to be caught in the middle. Sun Clan heard this and could only shut her mouth in embarrassment. After all, Duke Ding's madam had already said in front of her yesterday that she would bring Qin Yining out alone today. And Qin Huaining was so angry that she wanted to kill someone. What did this mean? Was Mama Bao here to slap her face in public? In front of so many people, she said that Duke Ding's madam only had one Miss Biao. This was simply trampling on her dignity. However, before Mama Bao finished speaking, she smiled and said to Qin Huaining, "There is one more thing that this old servant will say to you." Qin Huaining's lips trembled. She suppressed her anger and said, "Go ahead. Our Duke Ding's mansion has never practiced deception. The old madam and the Marquis both said that if a person is capable, he should go out and use his ability. If you use your ability to fight with your own family, it's not called being capable. It's called being dirty. Duke Ding's mansion will not produce such a person, and we don't want such a person. Miss, you are a smart person. Now that you have come to this point, you should think carefully about what you have done wrong. Don't think that you are the smartest person in the world. Others are blind, deaf, and stupid." After Mema Bao finished speaking, she straightened her back and bowed. Although it was a bow, it gave Qin Huaining a feeling that she was despised again. Qin Huaining couldn't hold it anymore. She ran out of the door crying. Chapter 51. Qin Yining and Mema Bao left Xiao Garden and hurried outside. Thinking of Qin Huaining's deflated face just now, she felt refreshed. Ever since she returned home, Qin Huaining had been jumping up and down like an impatient monkey. There was not a day of peace. She caused trouble for her, framed her, and harmed the people around her. Even if she never had the intention to harm others, Qin Huaining still judged others by herself and felt that she would definitely harm her. Since even Qin Huaining felt this way, if she did not do anything, she would suffer a great loss. This was only the beginning. The two left the second gate and were accompanied by the manservant to the side gate where the carriage was parked. Mema Bao saw that the manservant was far away and there were no outsiders around. She smiled and said, "This old servant is acting like this today because of old madam's orders. Old madam sympathizes with Mrs. Hard Work and knows that you have suffered a lot in this period of time. Old madam's meaning is that some people should be suppressed. Since grand aunt cannot do it, old madam does not mind being the villain. I understand grandmother's painstaking efforts. However, if we do this, it will inevitably cause grandmother to be hated by others." Although Qin Yining knew that Duchess Ding's actions were not purely because she felt sorry for her and also because she hoped that the two of them would keep each other in check, she could still understand her kindness. Mema Bao saw her sensible appearance and couldn't help but smile more sincerely. "Miss, there is no need to worry. Old madam said that one has done many things in one's life. It is hard to say that everything will go according to one's wishes. As long as one has a clear conscience, it is fine. Moreover, Miss Huaining's thoughts are crooked. If we don't suppress them, I'm afraid that they will hurt grand aunt in the future. Old madam loves her daughter dearly." Qin Yining nodded in understanding. Thinking of the Sun Clan, she couldn't help but smile and say, "Mother is a blessed person." Mema Bao also smiled. Compared to Qin Yining, the Sun Clan was a group of people with great fortune. However, she didn't know how to cherish it and didn't feel that she was blessed. Instead, she always felt wronged. "Miss, yesterday, old madam sent an invitation to Fairy Nun Temple, saying that we are going to perform the ritual today. They said that everything is ready. Just now, old madam ordered people to go to Cloud Stepping In to pick up Miss Tang. We can set off immediately. Grandmother is so considerate." When they walked out of the door, Mother Bao led Qin Yining to the magnificent and spacious carriage in the middle. Qin Yining held Mother Bao's hand and stepped on the red lacquered stool to get into the carriage. As soon as she lifted the warm curtain, she saw Duchess Ding, wrapped in a navy blue cloak with twined branches, sitting at the head of the carriage. Tang Meng, still dressed as a little Taoist nun, sat beside Duchess Ding. "Grandma, you're here too." Qin Yining sat down on the other side and pulled Mema Bao's arm. The carriage was spacious, and it didn't feel crowded even with 4 people inside. Mother Bao instructed the people outside to set off. Duchess Ding took Qin Yining's hand and said, "What? Do you think I'm waiting for you at home? I want to set off directly so that you don't have to travel a long way. We have to pass by here anyway, so I picked you up and left." Qin Yining nodded with a smile. He understood that it was inconvenient for Duchess Ding to enter Qin's mansion, so he said with a smile, "You can do whatever you want, as long as you are willing to take me out to play often." "You little girl." Duchess Ding was amused by Qin Yining and laughed. It took 4 hours to get to Fairy Nun Temple by carriage. Although the weather was cold, fortunately, there was no snow in the past 2 days. In addition, they were in the south in Dian. In winter, there was half rain and half snow. Today, the sun was high in the sky and the road was clean. They only stopped once to reorganize the carriage during the 4-hour journey. They talked and laughed for the rest of the time, so they didn't feel bored. Qin Yining and Duchess Ding both knew that Tang Meng's family had been exterminated, so they couldn't bear to see other people reunite. They were afraid of poking at her heartache, so they took care of her and didn't make her feel sad. Along the way, Tang Meng admired Duchess Ding's wisdom and became closer to Qin Yining. "Madam, we're here." The carriage stopped slowly. The accompanying maidservants outside came to invite them in, while the guards stood far away on both sides to protect them. Qin Yining and Tang Meng got out of the carriage first, then helped Duchess Ding get out. The coachman drove the carriage away from the mountain gate, and a sturdy old woman carried the gifts up the steps. Qin Yining looked up and saw that not far in front of him, there were hundreds of winding steps about 10 feet wide. The trees on both sides had fallen leaves, and there were also bamboo trees standing in great numbers, which made this place seem quiet. At the end of the steps, he could vaguely see the mountain gate. Qin Yining said, "Grandmother, ask them to carry the sedan chair. You'll be tired of walking so many steps." "It's okay. It's only 208 steps. How can I be tired? We'll just walk up slowly." Duchess Ding insisted on doing so. Mother Bao and the others on the side couldn't persuade her. Qin Yining and Tang Meng could only carefully help her up the mountain, one on each side. After walking dozens of steps, Duchess Ding began to pant. Her face was red and sweat appeared on her forehead. On the other hand, Qin Yining's expression didn't change and his heart didn't beat fast. Duchess Ding gasped with her hands on her waist and said with a smile, "Look at our sister Yi. I'm afraid that it won't be difficult for her to go up 10 more steps like this. She's better than all of you." The maids and older female servants who followed her were all panting heavily, and they all praised Qin Yining's physical strength at the same time. Qin Yining said with amusement, "I've been walking on the mountain since I was a child, so I'm used to it. Grandmother, you're old, but your legs are still so light. If you take good care of yourself and don't overwork yourself, your health will definitely be better." Duchess Ding gasped for a while again and then waved her hand. "Let's go. We'll go straight to the top this time." All the way to the top of the mountain, Qin Yining's face was only slightly ruddy, but the people around him were all out of breath. While Duchess Ding and the others were standing there gasping for breath, Qin Yining looked around. The white walls on both sides of the mountain gate stretched out and surrounded a spacious courtyard. The flat ground in front of the mountain gate was paved with bluestone bricks. Withered grass could be seen in the gaps between the bricks. The gilded plaque above the mountain gate had the words Fairy Lady Temple written on it. Behind the mountain gate, a magnificent building and a pagoda in the corner could be vaguely seen. At this time, several Taoist nuns in dark blue Taoist robes came out to greet them. When they saw Duchess Ding, they clasped their hands in salute. A thin Taoist nun in her early 30s came forward with a smile. She clasped her hands in salute and said, "Immeasurable celestial venerable for blessings. How is the old madam? I haven't seen you for a long time. Your complexion is getting ruddy. Thanks to you, is Fairy Lady Liu here? Master has been waiting for a long time. Please follow me." Qin Yining and Tang Meng supported Duchess Ding and led the others into the mountain gate. They walked along the bluestone brick road to the moon gate, bypassed the treasure hall, and came to the main room in the backyard. Mother Bao was waiting outside with the maidservants. Duchess Ding only brought Qin Yining and Tang Meng into the room. As soon as they entered, They saw a short and stout old Taoist nun in her early 50s sitting at the head of the table. Beside her, there was a Taoist nun serving tea. There was a young man sitting in the guest seat. The young man had long eyebrows, phoenix eyes, a high nose, and thin lips. He was dressed in a white robe and had a grey cloak. He was a handsome man. When he saw Duchess Ding and the others come in, he only glanced at them and then lowered his eyes politely. Behind him stood a 17 or 18-year-old follower. Perhaps the follower was young and lively, but he glanced at Qin Yining's face several times. Duchess Ding felt unhappy. Fairy Lady Liu, did you receive yesterday's invitation? She implied that since they had already informed them that women would come, why did they still let in a man? Chapter 52. Qin Yining didn't like Fairy Liu's words. Why did she talk about money? Her eyes were shrewd and her smile was unscrupulous. She didn't look like a monk at all. Instead, she was more like a businessman than Master Zhong, and a profiteer. She couldn't help but worry about Tang Meng. Tang Meng had lived here for half a year. Would she be mistreated by the unscrupulous Abbey Dean? Unexpectedly, Tang Meng threw herself into Fairy Liu's arms with a smile on her face and called out sweetly, "Master." "Oh, it's Jing Zhen. I haven't seen you for a long time. How are you?" "Master, I'm doing very well. Miss Qin took me in and I'll follow her from now on. She's a pure and kind person and will definitely treat me well. Master can rest assured." Hearing this, Fairy Liu looked at Qin Yining, who was behind Duchess Ding. Being stared at by her sparkling eyes, Qin Yining felt uncomfortable all over. He always felt that in her eyes, he was a commodity waiting to be sold at a high price, as if she was evaluating how much he could be sold for. Fairy Liu stared at Qin Yining, and the young man beside her also looked over casually. The entourage behind him even blinked his big eyes. Obviously, he was very curious about Duchess Ding and the others. Qin Yining raised his eyes and met the young man's gaze. He felt a little ashamed and annoyed. This man looked gentle, but he didn't know how to be polite. If there were women here, even if the Abbey Dean didn't drive them away, those who were really polite should avoid them. How could he still stare at her? Fairy Liu acted as if she didn't see it. She said with a smile, "I have a bad memory. When I saw the old madam bring such a beautiful lady here, I was so busy talking that I forgot to ask you to sit down. Come on, please sit down." As she spoke, she led Duchess Ding to the round chair on the right, opposite to the young man. Qin Yining stood respectfully behind Duchess Ding. Tang Meng stood beside Fairy Liu with the other two Taoist nuns. They looked intimate, holding Fairy Liu's arm and not letting go. Seeing Tang Meng's behavior, Qin Yining's impression of this shameless Abbey Dean changed a little. Tang Meng wasn't stupid. If this person didn't treat her well, why would she be so intimate with her? It seemed that Fairy Liu wasn't necessarily a bad person. Perhaps she was judging people based on their appearance. Duchess Ding started chatting with Fairy Liu. They only exchanged some greetings and gossip. At this time, anyone who had the slightest bit of foresight would avoid it. However, the young master remained seated at the side, fiddling with the porcelain bowl in his hand, occasionally taking a sip of tea. He had no intention of leaving at all. Duchess Ding had always known Xiangu Liu's temperament. She knew that Xiangu Liu wouldn't chase him away when she said that he was her master. Moreover, she wasn't familiar with him, so it wasn't good for her to chase him away. Helplessly, he could only swallow his anger and turn around to look at Qin Yining. Qin Yining understood and said, "Master Liu, we are here for Jing Zhen's return to the secular world. Please release her certificate so that she can follow me in the future." Fairy Liu's eyes sparkled, and her round face smiled like a flower. Immeasurable Lord! This young lady seems to be a fated person. However, Jing Zhen has been cultivating in our Taoist temple these days. We have put in a lot of effort. Fairy Liu began to count with her fingers and said, "You all know Jing Zhen's background. Although our fairy temple avoids the troubles of the mortal world, there are still people from the mortal world who come to make trouble. Do you know how many hardships we have suffered in order to take care of Jing Zhen? We have been worried sick." "Jing Zhen, don't you think so?" Tang Meng nodded seriously. Yes, if it weren't for Master's protection, I wouldn't be here today. That's right. Hearing Tang Meng's words, Fairy Liu became more energetic. Moreover, in the past 6 months, whether it is food or clothing, we have never mistreated Jingzhen. We have never been willing to let her do any hard work. Not to mention other things, I have arranged for people to take care of Jingzhen. Jingzhen, don't you think Master is right? Yes, Master has also arranged for 2 little apprentice nephews to accompany me. Therefore, my small Taoist temple has really put in a lot of effort for Jingzhen. I have to bear the pressure and worry. During this period of time, I have been worried and scared. Even the old Taoist nun has lost 4 or 5 pounds. How could Qin Yining not understand Fairy Liu's unscrupulous economic questions? He immediately smiled and said, I deeply admire your kindness. Moreover, Jingzhen's family in the mortal world has indeed been wronged. Today, I have come to help Jingzhen return to the mortal world so that I can take her with me in the future. Secondly, I would like to perform the 49 days of the ritual of resolving grievances and praying for blessings for the entire Tang family. As she spoke, Qin Yining took out a few banknotes from her sleeves. She stepped forward slowly and presented them with both hands. She said with a smile, here are banknotes worth 400 taels of silver. I'll send someone to deliver the remaining 1,600 taels of silver to you later. Please take care of the rite of resolving grievances and praying for blessings. You and I are both thinking for Jingzhen. This is also for Jingzhen's future. When Qin Yining brought the banknotes to her, Fairy Liu's expression immediately changed. Before Qin Yining finished speaking, she had already said yes and good a few times. Finally, she nodded and said, this humble Daoist sees that Miss is a kind and benevolent person. I can rest assured with Jingzhen by your side. This humble Daoist still has to go to the Daoist Records Department to take care of the identity certificate. When it is done, I will definitely give Miss a definite message. In this dynasty, Daoists couldn't become monks just because they wanted to. They had to have a certificate issued by the Daoist Records Department to prove their identity as a Daoist. If they wanted to return to the secular world, they naturally had to go through a certain process. Qin Yining understood and said, in that case, I will have to trouble you, Abidine. Not at all, not at all. Fairy Liu held the banknotes in her hand. Her eyes were shining and crow's feet were squeezed out of the corners of her eyes. She took Tang Meng's hand and said, this girl is kind and sincere to you. You can follow her in the future. Tang Meng smiled awkwardly, but she nodded obediently and said, yes, Master. Fairy Liu looked at the banknotes again and clicked her tongue twice. She said with a smile, look at this. It's like I'm giving alms to you. Abidine, what are you talking about? Seeing that Qin Yining had handled this matter so generously, Duchess Ding said, giving alms is also our merit. Since this girl has the heart, it means that her good karma has arrived. Fairy Liu is her karma to accumulate merit. She can exchange the worldly things in the mortal world for merit to protect her for a lifetime. In terms of giving and receiving, I'm afraid this girl has gained more. Old Madam is really a person with wisdom. Fairy Liu nodded with a smile. She was finally willing to put away the banknotes. She made a few gestures with her fingers and then said jokingly, I see that Old Madam's mountain route is dark and sunken. I'm afraid that something will happen in the mansion recently. Can I have a look at Old Madam's palm? Qin Yining found it funny when she saw how serious Fairy Liu was. Fairy Liu was giving alms to her, and now she was giving it to her grandmother. However, Duchess Ding leaned forward with a smile and stretched out her hands. After taking a closer look, Fairy Liu said with a solemn expression, Supreme Tai Tianzuan, Old Madam, please listen to me. In less than 2 months, there will be a bloody disaster in the mansion. I'm afraid the situation is extremely bad. Qin Yining frowned when he heard this. Even the young master and his entourage had a solemn look on their faces. Duchess Ding's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly asked, where is the disaster? Fairy Liu just said that my mountain route is dark and sunken, but my master. Fairy Liu quickly made a few gestures, shook her head, and sighed again. It's time and fate. If Old Madam is willing to accumulate good karma, there may be a chance for the mansion to survive. Otherwise, I'm afraid there will be a disaster of extermination. These words were too harsh. Qin Yining couldn't help but doubt his thoughts just now. Wasn't Fairy Liu doing alms for charity? How could she say such harsh words when she was giving alms to others? At most, a bloody disaster was enough to make people feel cold in their hearts. Why did she say that it would be a disaster of extermination? Could it be that she really saw something? Duchess Ding's face was a little tense. In fact, her heart had been hanging in the air for the past few years. The war between Daju and Dian was getting fiercer and fiercer, and they were getting closer and closer to the capital. She always felt that her family was being roasted on the fire, afraid that something would happen one day. In such a day of treading on thin ice, Fairy Liu's words of bloody disaster, extermination made Duchess Ding's heart turn cold. She took a deep breath and said, "When I came out today, I didn't bring too much money with me. I would like to ask Xian Jiyu to perform a 49-day ritual for my family. When I return, I will order someone to send 2,000 taels of silver over. It can be considered as forming a good karma for the Sun family when I have the ability." Fairy Liu nodded. She didn't look as greedy as before. Instead, she smiled at Qin Yining and said, "Miss, come here. I'll take a look for you." Qin Yining naturally wouldn't refuse. She smiled and walked to Fairy Liu's side. Fairy Liu first carefully looked at Qin Yining's face, then took her hand and pinched it. Then she looked at her hands and smiled. "Miss, you are a person of great luck. Although your fate is bumpy, you can always turn misfortunes into blessings. Your ears are higher than your eyebrows, and your oval cheeks are enough to show that you have lived a rich life. Moreover, your marriage is very good, and your red star has already moved." As Fairy Liu spoke, she smiled and glanced at the young man who had been listening silently from the corner of her eye. The young man didn't seem to feel it and continued to drink tea. Qin Yining was a little embarrassed. Was this Fairy Liu reliable or not? How could she say such words in front of a man? She decided to think that Fairy Liu was blackmailing her just now. However, Fairy Liu smiled and pushed Qin Yining to Duchess Ding. "Madam, this granddaughter of yours is very kind and has good luck. Maybe your good fate and a glimmer of hope are in this girl." Duchess Ding hugged Qin Yining and patted her hand comfortingly. She smiled and said, "Thank you, Fairy Liu. My granddaughter is indeed very good." She stood up and said, "Since we're here today, we have to look around. Go and burn incense for progenitor Dumu and Kowtow." Fairy Liu smiled and said, "Madam and Miss, please do as you wish." Duchess Ding smiled and took Qin Yining's hand to walk out. At this moment, a little Taoist nun quickly walked in from outside. She bowed and said, "Master, Madam Euro is here." Chapter 53. Hearing this, the handsome young man did not immediately move. He still sat lazily in his original position and did not speak. He just looked at Fairy Liu indifferently. The manservant behind him looked even more calm. He crossed his arms and raised his chin, as if he was waiting for Fairy Liu to express her opinion. Fairy Liu sighed and said, "When have I ever disobeyed my master's words? I'll do as you say." With this affirmation, the young man finally stood up. He straightened his cloak and said, "In that case, I will also look around." At this time, Qin Yining had followed Duchess Ding to the yard. She vaguely heard a low and magnetic male voice. She felt it was familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had heard it, so she didn't pay much attention to it. "Grandmother, shall we go and see the pagoda first?" Qin Yining helped Duchess Ding out of the moon gate, turned a corner, and came to the yard in front of the main hall. She asked with a smile. Duchess Ding shook her head and sighed, "Sister Yi, if you like, you can walk around by yourself later. I am a little tired and want to burn incense for progenitor Dumu. Then I will go with you." Qin Yining saw that Duchess Ding was tired, so she gave up the idea of walking around by herself. Duchess Ding saw her like this and her smile deepened. She said, "It's rare for you little girls to come out. You can walk around by yourself. I have Mama Bao and the maids to accompany me. After I burn incense, I will go back to the carriage to rest. You can look around by yourself. It's not a wasted trip to the fairy temple, is it? Qin Yining was actually a little tempted, but she was worried about Duchess Ding's health. Seeing her like this, Duchess Ding touched her cheek. Little girl, you are still young. Don't worry so much. What can happen to me? You and Miss Tang can go and see the pagoda. Later, you can come to the hall to burn incense. It's settled. Then she waved her hand and looked like she was trying to drive her away. She took Mama Bao and went to the main hall first. Tang Meng stayed by Qin Yining's side and said with a smile, Miss, don't worry too much. I can see that old madam's body is fine. It's just a mental illness. I think she's worried about her family. Qin Yining nodded, thinking that Duchess Ding must have been frightened by Fairy Liu's words. Qin Yining didn't know much about the metaphysics of physiognomy, so she was dubious about it. Thinking about how she had been called a red Luan star, Qin Yining felt her face heat up. She couldn't help but think of the lecher who had suddenly descended from the sky that day. Not only had he stolen her hairpin, but he had also touched her face. Qin Yining felt his face burning. He frowned and coughed lightly. Then let's walk around first. You're familiar with this place. Where's the best scenery? Tang Meng smiled and took Qin Yining to walk around the fairy Taoist temple. Qin Yining was still wearing the gorilla red brocade cloak with white rabbit fur. In the grey winter scenery, her figure seemed to be walking in an ink painting, becoming a bright color that stood out. Pang Xiao and Huzi came to the open space in front of the main hall. From afar, they saw her and Tang Meng walking towards the pagoda. Master, I didn't expect to meet Miss Qin here today. Would you like to go up and talk to her? Huzi winked and said, what old Taoist nun said just now was very meaningful. It's such a good opportunity. Would you like to go? Pang Xiao frowned and looked at Huzi. Huzi coughed and finally shut his mouth, no longer spouting nonsense. Pang Xiao stood there and looked at Qin Yining's back without moving. There was no one else around. If there was someone, they would find that his elegant white clothes and grey rat cloak didn't match the sharp aura he inadvertently exuded. Suddenly, the two of them heard footsteps approaching them. Pang Xiao and Huzi reacted quickly, and hid behind a big and sturdy tree. They heard Duchess Ding and Mama Bao leave the main hall and walk towards the mountain gate. As they walked, they said, Sister Yi is a sensible girl. Maybe she has seen that the abbot is also a test. If she can't even bear to give alms, how can she be sincere to Miss Tang? Don't you think that person is too noble? This old servant sees that she has the face of a scammer. These are all appearances. I think she is a layman on the outside but kind on the inside. Otherwise, why would she take Miss Tang in? I think the Philistine is just a disguise. Duchess Ding and Mema Bao gradually walked away, and their voices gradually weakened. Pang Xiao and Huzi came out from behind the tree. Master, I didn't expect the old madam to be a sensible person. Huzi had a good impression of Duchess Ding. Pang Xiao nodded. Then, he calmed his mind, and restrained his sharpness. His ruthless and vicious eyes became a little hollow. His back wasn't as straight as it usually was. Instead, it was slightly hunched. In this way, his momentum suddenly changed and he became an elegant and noble young master. Let's go to the main hall. Pang Xiao took the lead. Huzi nodded and said, let's also burn incense. Old master, old madam, and old madam are still in the palace. I don't know how they are. I hope we can do it well this time and relieve the emperor's anger. Speaking of his mother, maternal grandfather, and maternal grandmother who were temporarily detained in the palace, Pang Xiao's expression became somewhat worried. The golden statue of progenitor Dumu in the hall was lofty and majestic. Pang Xiao and Huzi lit the incense and then knelt down in a Taoist ceremony. They kowtowed and recited, I beg Lady Mother of the Chariot to bless the safety of my mother and my family. I will bear all the sins that I have committed. I only hope that my family will not be harmed. With his forehead on the ground, Pang Xiao, who was praying devoutly, looked a little fragile. Huzi, who was kneeling beside him, felt sorry for him. He was always by Pang Xiao's side, so he understood his difficulties the most. Everyone knew that little Wang Yi was in a high position and was decisive in killing. But who could see that he was lonely at the top? The saddest thing for people was that no one could understand them even though they had sacrificed a lot. They were even blamed in every way. Because of little Wang Yi's ruthlessness, sometimes even old master, old madam, and old madam would stab him, hoping that he would not be so reckless. But who could understand their helplessness? Sometimes, they were in a dilemma. Creak, the sound of the door opening broke the silence in the hall. Pang Xiao and Huzi turned their heads at the same time and saw Qin Yining, who was wearing a red cape, and Tang Meng, who was dressed as a little Taoist nun, walking in together. Perhaps because she was in a good mood, Qin Yining had a bright smile on her face when she entered. Her dimples and smiling eyes were especially cute. Pang Xiao was stunned for a moment and quickly turned around. Her ears were dyed red. She knelt stiffly on the ground and looked up at the statue of progenitor Dumu, as if she was praying sincerely. There were 3 futons on the ground. Huzi was kneeling on the left side at first, but now he was standing on the other side. Only Pang Xiao occupied the middle position, leaving the left and right sides empty. Qin Yining was a little hesitant. But after all, the Taoist temple was a public place and she had no right to chase people away. She could only ignore the young man beside her and went to burn incense with Tang Meng. Then she knelt on the rightmost futon and closed her eyes to pray sincerely. Tang Meng knelt on the left futon and also did the Taoist ritual. Although Pang Xiao was kneeling, the corner of his eyes had not left Qin Yining since she knelt beside him. She was born so delicate and cute, but her fate was so rough. She should be 14 years old now, right? When they first met, he was about the same age as she was now. A 7-year-old little girl, wearing tattered clothes that were white and clean from washing. She had borrowed money from the shopkeeper of the medicine shop to treat her foster mother's illness. But she was chased out and pushed to the ground by the shop assistant. At that time, he was watching with Mr. Zheng and Imperial bodyguard Zhao not far away. When he heard Imperial bodyguard Zhao's gloating laughter, he felt uncomfortable in his heart. He thought she would cry. In fact, she had the right to cry. But she only stood up and patted the dust off her body. She stubbornly carried the broken basket and used the copper coins she had left to buy 2 meat buns for her foster mother to eat. He still could not forget the pair of big and bright eyes on her small face and the forced smile on her face when she patted her shriveled belly and told her foster mother that she had already eaten. At that time, he could not bear it and pretended to pass by her house to ask for water. When the little girl saw him, she stared at him blankly for a long time. Then, she smiled and called out, "Beautiful brother." She went to boil some water for him. After drinking the water, he gave her the money pouch he had on him. There were about 10 taels of silver and some copper coins inside. She was shocked by the amount of silver and refused to accept it. He pretended to be benevolent and said that it was a reward. Then, he left her house under the angry gazes of Mr. Zheng and bodyguard Zhao. Mr. Zheng and bodyguard Zhao were his father's former subordinates. After he left, they immediately questioned him loudly. "Why are you helping the daughter of your enemy? Qin Huayuan, that bastard, deserves to die." If it were not for his evil scheme, General Pang would not have died unjustly. He would not have been cut into pieces and fed to the dogs. Not a single member of the Pang family was left alive. He was 15 years old and had just been recruited by Li Chitian to serve in the army for a year. Li Chitian raised the banner of General Pang and set him up as a banner to avenge his father and overthrow the tyranny. No one asked him if he was willing. It was just that the army suddenly stopped in front of his grandfather's small restaurant, snatched him away, and left. No one even knew that he was just the product of General Pang's one-night stand. General Pang himself might not even remember his existence. And if the mistress of the Pang family was good, how could she quietly drive away his mother? His fate was decided by someone else since he was born. And this girl, wasn't her fate also decided by someone else since she was born? At that time, he asked Mr. Zheng, "What does this little girl know? You took her out and made her suffer. Isn't it enough for so many years? If you have the ability, why don't you seek revenge from her father? Why do you have to make things difficult for an innocent child?" Mr. Zheng only said one sentence, "The child pays the father's debts." They had different ideas in certain aspects. Arguing could not solve the problem. After another year, he had gained a certain amount of prestige in the army. He had also become a cold-blooded person who would not be soft-hearted when killing people. But every time he thought of that little girl, his cold and hard heart seemed to soften. He brought people to look for her and wanted to give her some financial help. But Liang City had been ransacked and her family was only left with a dilapidated and empty house. He caught someone and asked, only to find out that her foster mother had died last month and her whereabouts were unknown. He thought that she must have died. A sensible little girl, a little girl who would softly call him Big Brother Beauty, a sensible child who made him feel guilty and pitiful, died silently and unwillingly just like that. Chapter 54. Qin Yining did not know what the person beside her was thinking. She focused on praying and stood up. At the same time, a sweet female voice came from outside the hall. Yes, I still remember your heroic appearance. Returning here again, I am filled with emotions. Qin Yining was stunned. Before she could react, Pang Xiao grabbed her hand and quickly went around the shrine, hiding behind the statue of Lady Mother of the Chariot. Qin Yining was at a loss for words. She was about to cry out in surprise, but her mouth was forcefully covered. Her waist was also wrapped around by an iron arm. Her entire body was leaning into an unfamiliar embrace. Her cheeks suddenly burned. Qin Yining saw that Tang Meng was also brought over by the attendant in the same way. She was somewhat anxious. At this moment, the door of the hall creaked open and closed. The female voice laughed and said, "Your Majesty, look, this place is still the same as before." What answered her was an old male voice. "Yes, I was fortunate enough to be here in the past. When I saw the statue, I felt that the statue was dignified, but there was also a hint of charm. I immediately felt happy and could not help but take a few more glances. Who knew that when I left the mountain gate of Lady Immortal Temple and went down the mountain, I would meet you who was going up the mountain." There was the sound of clothes rustling, and the woman gasping in surprise. "Euro, I thought at that time that the heavens already knew what I was thinking and specially sent a goddess to my side to relieve my pain of yearning. I am just a willow. How can I be called a goddess? It is just that your Majesty is the Emperor, so it is true that the heavens are looking after you. This time, Lady Immortal Liu gave you the elixir of immortality. After you used it, you became even more energetic." The woman's voice was very charming. Then, there was the sound of a man's happy laughter and the sound of water. Qin Yining blushed as she listened. She peeked through a small gap at the foot of the statue and saw a young woman being held in the arms of a tall man in his 60s with grey hair on his temples. Their lips and teeth were intertwined, and they were kissing passionately. Qin Yining had never seen such a scene before. His face flushed red. He quickly turned around and bumped into the man behind him. The unfamiliar man's scent lingered around her nose. His breath was mixed with the smell of incense and candles. There was also an unfamiliar scent unique to men and a faint smell of grass. It was not unpleasant, but it forcefully and overbearingly forced its way into her breath. When she looked up, she realized that the young master was not looking at her. Instead, his handsome face was tense as he observed the scene outside through the gaps in the altar. He was so serious and nervous that Qin Yining calmed down a lot. Hearing the conversation between the two people outside, she already knew who they were. It was hard to imagine that the Emperor and the Demon Empress had such a past. The Emperor was so muddle-headed that he could even think of doing such things in front of the statue of progenitor Dumu. However, this was far from enough. What the Emperor and the Empress did next even broke Qin Yining's 3 views. They actually took off half of their clothes on the praying mat and had sex with her. The woman's moans and the man's deep breathing, as well as the sound of their collisions, entered Qin Yining's ears. Qin Yining wished she could find a hole to hide in. She could only cover her ears and close her eyes to avoid this embarrassing scene. In her heart, she was cursing the Demon Empress and the fatuous Emperor thousands of times. Pang Xiao lowered his head and looked at the woman who wanted to bury her face in his arms. A gentle smile appeared on his lips. However, when his gaze met the two people outside, a thought flashed through his mind. If he wanted to kill the muddle-headed Emperor of the Dian now, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. However, after quickly calculating the gains and losses, He extinguished the thought of killing him now. The muddle-headed emperor would bring more benefits to the Daju if he was alive. The lovemaking soon stopped. The woman praised the emperor's bravery tenderly. The two of them were intimate for a while before tidying up their clothes and leaving hand in hand. It was not until the door of the hall was closed and the outside was quiet that Qin Yining regained her senses and hurriedly withdrew from the young man's embrace. Tang Meng was also blushing. She ran to Qin Yining's side. Her big eyes were misty and she looked like she was about to cry. Qin Yining held Tang Meng's hand. He did not dare to look at the strange young master who was standing there for a long time. He turned and fled. Tang Meng pulled Qin Yining to a secluded corner and hid behind a big tree. Their faces were red and they did not know what to say for a moment. After a while, Tang Meng gritted her teeth and said, "The muddle-headed demon empress is so absurd. I think that muddle-headed emperor has the face of a fallen country. The demon empress is so tenacious that she caused my entire family to pay with their lives. Why is the heavens so blind to send down a bolt of lightning to kill her?" As Tang Meng spoke, tears welled up in her eyes. Qin Yining frantically wiped away her tears. At this time, she felt that any words of comfort were useless. No matter how many words she said, how could they compare to the pain that the destruction of her family brought to Tang Meng? She looked carefree, but in her heart, she was hiding her pain. Qin Yining comforted her for a long time. When he saw that Tang Meng gradually stopped crying, he said, "I know you are sad, but in this life, everyone has to go through all kinds of ups and downs. It is useless to look back on the past and regret. Life has to go on, and people have to look forward. In the future, you will be by my side. We will be a family. I will not leave you alone. In the end, we can be companions." Tang Meng was so touched by Qin Yining's sincere words that she wanted to cry again. She sniffled and forced a smile. "Miss, I know you have the best heart." Qin Yining smiled and tidied up Tang Meng's hair. He said, "But I am afraid you will have to change your name in the future. Ruelan, too. You can discuss it with Ruelan in the next 2 days. I am not very educated, and I can't think of a good name. You can think of a name that you like. I will discuss it with Sister Ruelan later. As for me, it is even easier." Tang Meng rolled her big eyes and smiled. "I will be called Bing Tang." "Bing Tang?" Qin Yining laughed. "Good, this name suits you. You are a sweet girl. If you are called Bing Tang in the future, your life will be sweet." "Yes, it will be sweet. And Bing Tang looks good and tastes good. Isn't it great?" They looked at each other and smiled. They both felt relieved. Qin Yining said, "Let's go down the mountain so that old madam won't be worried. When we see old madam later, don't say anything. Just pretend that nothing happened today." "Okay, I know what to do." The two of them tidied each other up for a while, and only then did they descend the mountain. When they reached the foot of the mountain, they saw Mema Bao looking up. When she saw Qin Yining and Tang Meng coming back happily hand in hand, Mema Bao felt relieved. She said, "Miss, you are back. Get in the carriage and warm up." "Sorry to trouble you, Mema Bao. Grandmother must be worried. I followed Miss Tang around the monastery and was delayed for a while." As they spoke, they came to the front of the carriage. Qin Yining and Tang Meng stepped onto the red wooden stool and got into the carriage. Seeing Duchess Ding sitting in the middle with a gentle smile, Qin Yining picked a light topic and talked about some of the scenery he saw in the temple. When the topic came to an end, Duchess Ding asked gently, "Did you meet anyone in the temple?" Qin Yining's heart jumped, but his expression didn't change. He smiled and said, "No, I just saw a young madam in the distance. I didn't meet her face to face." Hearing this, Duchess Ding nodded. She thought for a bit and glanced at Tang Meng. In the end, she didn't say anything. Qin Yining understood that grandmother might have met the empress and recognized her identity. She wanted to take advantage of this moment to tell her that the empress had come. However, she was afraid that this topic would hurt Tang Meng's heart, so she swallowed the matter of the empress. However, grandmother wouldn't know what an awkward matter had just happened in the hall. She had also heard the emperor and empress's conversation, mentioning that the emperor was eating the elixir that Fairy Liu had made. Thinking about it, The past emperors had all sought the method of immortality, and the Qinglong emperor was no exception. However, she was surprised that a Philistine like Fairy Liu would be proficient in the art of making elixirs. This person was truly unfathomable. At least, Qin Yining couldn't tell whether Fairy Liu was truly Philistine or pretending. He couldn't tell how wide her connections were and whether the skills she was proficient in were real or just a bluff. The carriage first sent Tang Meng back to the cloud stepping in. Duchess Ding then ordered people to send Qin Yining back to his manor. After Qin Yining said goodbye to Duchess Ding, he didn't immediately return home. Instead, he went to the Zhong manor to find Master Zhong and ordered him to send 1,600 liang of silver to Fairy Liu Temple. When Master Zhong heard such a large sum, he said in surprise, "That old Daoist priestess is so greedy." He felt a bit guilty. After all, it was he who had begged and allowed Qin Yining to take care of Tang Meng's matter. He hadn't thought that going to King Ning's manor to ask for Tang Meng would be risky and that he would have to pay such a large sum of silver to return to the secular world. Qin Yining said with a smile, "Money is earned to be used. As long as I make sure that every sum of money is spent on the right path, it's fine. Miss Tang is a living person, and she may not be unworthy of the money. Besides, in Duchess Ding's words, it's also for my own good. Miss Tang is magnanimous and kind. In the future, she will definitely be rewarded." Master Zhong listened to the orders and went to make arrangements. He then personally escorted Qin Yining back to his manor. By the time he arrived in front of the family Qin house, the sky was already dark. It was almost time for the key to be dropped. Qin Yining took the oil-wall carriage to the second gate and then went directly to Xixiao Garden. Mammy Qin was whispering to Ji Xiong in the corridor. Seeing Qin Yining come back, both of them smiled and came forward to salute. "Fourth Miss Tang, you're back. Madam Dowager was just talking about you. She was worried that it would be unsafe on the road and was afraid that something would delay you. It's my fault for making Madam Dowager worry about me. Has Madam Dowager rested?" "Not yet. Miss, please come in." Mammy Qin personally led Qin Yining into the room. She helped her take off her cloak and then went inside to reply. After getting Madam Dowager's permission, Qin Yining smiled and went into the inner room. She saluted and said, "Madam Dowager, granddaughter is back. It was not easy to walk on the road, so I was delayed for a while. It's my fault for making Madam Dowager worry about me." Madam Dowager was wearing a dark green jacket. She sat cross-legged on the bed and smoked a pipe. After taking 2 puffs of the pipe, she said, "What can happen when you go out with your grandmother? It's my fault for worrying about you. Did you go smoothly today?" Everything went smoothly. Qin Yining deliberately ignored the jealousy in Madam Dowager's words. She asked with concern, "Madam Dowager, did you eat dinner? Did it taste good?" Madam Dowager knocked on the pipe and sighed, "I didn't like it. How could I eat?" You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.